the immortal stranger. Starting as a traveling merchant, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Dragon King. Zhao Chen perked up upon hearing that and hurriedly asked, who is the mastermind behind this? Earth cracks and mountain collapses cannot dispel hatred and the sins that cover 100 miles of the mortal world. Yang Wanhua calls it Wayuru, and the common people praise the god of evil. Qi Fimeng first recited this poem, and then continued, the main culprit is the god of evil Song Wayuru. In addition to him, there are two accomplices, Yang Wen, the examination envoy of the Human Road Office, and Li Fuchen, the current head of the Zhang Li family. Zheng Qingyan was also killed in their sneak attack. Her greatest obsession is to kill Song Wayuru and avenge her, and this needs to be done within 3 years. Song Wayuru. I remember Master mentioned this god of evil. He was an abandoned disciple of the Upper Sect's 10,000 Beasts sect. But wasn't he captured by the people of the 10,000 Beasts sect? Zhao Chen thought about it for a moment and remembered where he had heard of this name. Obviously, the people from the 10,000 Beasts gate let him go in the end. Qi Fimeng spread her hands, then briefly explained to Zhao Chen the results of Zheng Qingyan's calculations using the 9-line celestial phenomena and her own investigation, and finally said, in short, Song Wayuru used the Key of Morning Light, a star god relic stolen from the Zhuge family, to set a trap in the Red Gold Mountain, trapping the Dongsuan cultivator of the Li family in the mist of history. And then joined forces with the current head of the Li family, Li Fuchen, to snatch the map of the Xianyang Immortal Gate, in order to open the road to history. In other words, Song Wayuru was behind the scenes manipulating the events in Shijin Mountain and Bingquan Town. It seems that he is also the biggest enemy of the original owner. In addition, the Key of Morning Light relic of the Star God. I remember that there was also an item called Key of Morning Light among the lost accessories of the Great Sun Star Raft. Could it be the same thing? If so, then the so-called Star God is the Great Sun Star Raft, or its previous collaborator? I remember that the last time I went to the Mist of History to do a mission, the Star God Temple was already in ruins. So, it is conservatively estimated that the Great Sun Star Raft had entered this world before the Taichu Daojin preached. Then the question is, how long have I been sleeping? The entire ancient times? In addition, after going around in circles, it turns out that the meaning of the special mission is to recover the accessories of the Star Raft, right? Well, I remember that Mirror Village also seemed to be pulled into the Mist of History because of the 8 diagrams bright light mirror. Could it be that the source of the historical fog lies in the Big Sun Star Raft? Zhao Chen suppressed his chaotic thoughts and asked, Fenimeng, do you know what happened in Shijin Mountain? Qi Fenimeng shook her head and said regretfully, I don't know. After all, it has nothing to do with Zheng Qingyan. She only roughly deduced that Song Wayuru used the great magical power of Yang Wanhua, Fulao Kangsheng to manipulate the fate of 2 towns and 1 village, and wove a reasonable story for these Dongsu and Zenren, and finally lured him into a trap. Yang Wanhua called Wayuru, Fulao Kangsheng Song Yishen. This magical power can actually control the fate of a place. It's even more weird than Zheng Qingyan's evil dragon immortal body. Zhao Chen sighed. The former is at most equivalent to being able to save a file for yourself and can reload and revive infinitely, while the latter can even change the game script. In fact, he is not as strong as imagined. He can only control the fate of people below the realm of magical powers at most. As for magical powers, he can only interfere with them and cannot control them. As for Dongsun, if he really has that ability, he wouldn't have to set up a plan to trick the Li family's 'Tianjian out. Wouldn't it be better to directly manipulate fate? Qi Fimeng said with a smile. That's right. Zhao Chen nodded slightly, but he has such a strong magical power. Why does he have to spend so much effort to enter his story? Well, the call from the head of the Li family and the Human Dao government makes me understand. Miss Qi held her chin with her hand and thought for a while. I guess he wants to go one step further and be promoted to Dongsun. Can't he be promoted to Dongsun, even if he has a first grade magical power as the foundation? I remember reading in a Taoist book that the top 3 magical powers can directly serve as the foundation of the Dharma appearance. The 4th grade magical power is slightly inferior, but it can be supplemented by other appropriate magical powers or rituals. And below the 4th grade, there is almost no hope of achieving the first level of Dangsa and Dharma appearance. Zhao Chen was a little puzzled. Qi Meng said seriously, promoting to Dangsa is an extremely difficult thing. The 1st grade magical power as the foundation is just a greater hope. What's more, although the magical power of Yang Wanhe, Fulio Kang Sheng is also considered good among the 1st grade, it cannot provide help for the achievement of Dangsa. How do you say that? Zhao Chen asked. The reason why the 1st grade magical power is powerful is that the inheritor of the magical power will more or less have a connection with the great existence of the source of the magical power. You can borrow the other party's true meaning and status to help yourself practice. But Yang is an ancient mythical beast. Although its level is equal to that of Shengsa and Zhenjin, it is in history and naturally cannot provide much help to the contemporary inheritor. Well, the level of supernatural power is okay, because the legend of Yang is not extinct, and I can still borrow some power. But even so, the great supernatural power of Yang Wanhe, Fulio Kang Sheng cannot be used at will. Qi Meng explained simply. No wonder he has been planning for a long time just to enter history. Zhao Chen suddenly realized and remembered the secret records of Qigang and the 12 doors of the Golden Tower and Jade Chamber that he had practiced, and couldn't help asking, does the practice of Taichu Taoist also have this drawback? The power of Taoist is unpredictable, I can't judge, and it's too early for you to consider this now. Qi Meng said here, glanced at Zhao Chen, and said meaningfully, what's more, the foundation of your future may not be the great supernatural power of 5 emperors paying homage to the truth. Cough cough. Zhao Chen coughed a few times after hearing this, and changed the subject. You just said that you dare not communicate with the Dragon King who is the source of the practice for the time being. Then what kind of existence is the Dragon King? He remembered that when his master talked about the secret forces in the world, he mentioned an organization called Dragon King Temple. So he vaguely felt that the Dragon King might not be a good thing. Qi Meng put away her smile and said seriously, Dragon King is the top existence among the great evil demons, and is the leader of many great evils and demon kings that threaten our great Xia's East China Sea defense line. Its strength is also slightly beyond that of ordinary Shengsuan cultivators. Demons, Dragon King, is a great evil demon. Then doesn't the Zheng family practice the skills passed down by the demons? Zhao Chen was really surprised this time. You know, the master has always warned him to stay away from the temptation of demons. It's not entirely a demon skill. The Dragon King's Blessing Sutra is a skill created by the Shengsuan ancestor of the Zheng family after watching the Dragon King's Great Rain Dragon King Sutra and integrating what he learned. After all, there is a layer of separation. It's not as dangerous as imagined. And the skills of this world, those below the Dangsuan level are okay, but above the Dangsuan, except for the 3 major holy places, whose skills are not dangerous. I originally thought that some of the Dangsuan techniques that imitated ancient gods should be fine, but after seeing the earth god who became a Taoist evil in Mirror Village, I felt that the reason why those techniques can now appear normal is probably because of the fog of history. However, power is not divided into good and evil. Even if it is a side door cultivator who directly practices evil techniques, if he has not fallen into evil and has not performed large-scale blood sacrifices, the Taoist officials will not care. It was the first time that Zhao Chen heard of this statement, and he was surprised and said, except for the 3 major holy places, all the techniques are unsafe, including the Taichu Daojins. In fact, even the techniques of the 3 major holy places are safe because of the Daojin. Qi Meng said this, and added, this is what Zheng Qingyan saw in his family's classics, and it is not necessarily correct. Chapter 102 Sweet Potato Rice. Except for the 3 holy places, all the techniques above the Dangsuan are not safe, which means that the source of these techniques may have more or less problems. The 3 holy places are safe because of the existence of the Taoist Lord. What if the Taoist Lord is gone? For example, the Taoist Lord Taichu has disappeared, and the ancient Buddhas and Bodhisattvas mentioned by Fei Meng I just don't know if the Dairi Xingcha can shield this danger. Forget it. As Fei Meng said, it's too far to think about these now. I'm just a key cultivator who has opened up the 12 meridians. It will take time to open up the 8 meridians. Sighing slightly, Zhao Chen recalled the information brought by Zheng Qingyuan and found that it would not bring much help to the task 3 months later. He still had to start the investigation through the 3 directions discussed with Qi Meng just now. However, at least the general direction can be determined. A trap has been set in Shijin Mountain. Anyway, let's go back first, Zhao Chen said, and was about to squat down and stick the prepared paper horse on his legs, but was stopped by Qi Meng. Zhao Chen looked at her in confusion, and then he saw Qi Meng stretched out her slender finger, pointed at the Sakura Dragon Fairy Zheng Qingyuan, and said with a smile, "No need to bother. Let's ride her this time." Riding her this time? I dare say you really used me as a mount before. After Zhao Chen complained in his heart, he also remembered that Qi Meng had just introduced that Zheng Qingyuan had a 3rd grade Taixi magical power Dream of the Goddess of Beauty, which could transform into bubbles and travel in the same water system. And this magical power can carry people. On the other side, Zheng Qingyuan still didn't speak. She only glanced at Qi Meng and Zhao Chen, then raised her hands and used the Dream of the Goddess of Beauty. In Zhao Chen's eyes, he and Miss Qi became illusory at the same time, and then were wrapped by countless bubbles. Then, these bubbles melted into the water of Xianjian River bit by bit. About 3 or 4 minutes later, as the bubbles collapsed one after another, the figures of Zhao Chen, Qi Meng, and Zheng Qingyuan appeared on a shallow beach near Human County. This experience is not pleasant at all. Zhao Chen shook his dizzy head and gave a bad review. In the past few minutes, if he had not become a true key cultivator with a long breath, he would have been suffocated to death in the bubble. Qi Meng had the same feeling, and she knew that this was Zheng Qingyuan's deliberate revenge for the word ride her, and she had evidence. After all, she is herself, and she is her. Their minds are completely transparent. How can they not understand each other's thoughts? Fortunately, there is only one incarnation. If there are more, I'm afraid I will go crazy immediately. Alas, my realm is still not enough, and I can't integrate from a higher level all the time. Before you truly become a supernatural power, you can't add any more incarnations. While Qi Meng was thinking secretly, she asked Zheng Qingyuan to go to the county magistrate's mansion in the Li family's residence to inquire about the news, while she and Zhao Chen climbed up the Lushan mountain west of the county town. As it was almost dinner time, every family in the slums on Lushan mountain was cooking, but there was no fragrance in the air, because most of them were cooking sweet potato rice. After all, most families here can only afford sweet potato rice with their meager salaries. As they walked, Zhao Chen suddenly heard a bell, and then dozens of children ran out of a relatively intact, but still simple building. They were in groups of 3 or 5, fighting and rushing home. Zhao Chen looked at the school bags they were carrying, and said in surprise, "Is there a school in this slum?" Of course there is. Children who grow up eating sweet potato rice cannot practice martial arts. On the contrary, studying is their advantage, and one of their future ways out. Miss Qi knew that Zhao Chen used to be the son of a wealthy merchant and didn't know the sufferings of the world, so she explained casually, eating sweet potato rice all year round will gradually wither and dry up a person's soul, and most of them will not live to be 40 years old. But a weak soul also means low inspiration. On the contrary, they will not be affected by the Tao text. Many places will hire people who have eaten sweet potato rice for more than 10 years to copy the classics containing Tao text, but the prerequisite is to be literate and have beautiful handwriting. And some institutions that study science also need such people as assistants. These are all very decent jobs, and the competition is very fierce. After hearing this, Zhao Chen felt that the world was full of absurdity and evil. He pondered and said, the reason why the court vigorously promotes sweet potato rice is not just because of its low price and can feed more people. He thought so from the beginning, when he knew about the crop sweet potato rice. Even though sweet potato rice has many disadvantages such as not being able to practice martial arts and having a short lifespan, the low price alone is enough. After all, in this era, without cheap food, most people would not live to be 40, let alone have the conditions to practice martial arts. Overall, it was a good policy. Cheap? In fact, as long as the Shengsa True Lord wants, any ordinary crop can be cheap. Qi Meng explained with a smile, because some Shengsa True Lords have been able to open up caves by themselves. As long as they plant a certain crop in the cave world and repeatedly use magic power to ripen it for a few decades, the harvest will be enough for the people of the world to eat for thousands of years. This, Zhao Chen was stunned and felt that he still underestimated the cultivators in this world. In this case, what is the advantage of sweet potato rice? It's very simple. The world has a large population. The power of the court can only radiate to slightly prosperous towns. People in villages and barren areas lack the protection of cultivators. They are easily targeted by people from evil organizations and start blood sacrifices. Once rescue is not timely, it will lead to tragedy. So, sweet potato rice is actually a way to cut off the fire from the bottom of the pot. It makes the souls of a large number of people in poor areas lose their spirituality, so that even blood sacrifices will have no effect. Since sweet potato rice has been widely promoted, members of evil organizations in Daksha have rarely touched rural areas. Secondly, people with strong souls are prone to attract weirdness and may become vengeful spirits after death. It is easy to cause major disasters in remote areas, and sweet potato rice reduces this possibility. Finally, people's desires may be bewitched and exploited by demons, while people with weak soul power cannot hear the voices of demons or see their forms. Moreover, people with low spirituality are mostly honest and easy to satisfy. As long as they are not hungry, they don't have that many desires. In short, it was based on the above advantages that after sweet potato rice was developed, a certain Zenjin in the Daksha court decided to spend decades growing rice in the cave. Qi Meng seemed to be familiar with these and explained casually, "I see." Zhao Chen nodded and said nothing more. After this little episode, the two stopped talking and laughing and soon came to the space under the base of the statue of the goddess of light. At this time, Chekingsu and Xiang, who were imprisoned here, had been hungry for several days. When they saw the two of them coming, their eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 103 Yan Hangsha, I can't tell the difference. I can't tell the difference at all. The Black Emperor's blood bleeding sword art, a Gangsha technique. It is a copy of the Li family's Dangsa and level magic skill, the 5 Emperor's true sword art, with a standard selling price of 3,700 star coins. The Bodhisattva's joyful weaving, a dual cultivation auxiliary technique, with a standard selling price of 650 star coins. The Boundless Bliss Finger, a magic power technique. After being fully developed, it can be cultivated into the Yinsha spell, the Bliss Finger, with the help of Peach Blossom Evil, with a standard selling price of 550 star coins. The Giant Bear's Great Strength Art, a refining technique, with a standard selling price of 400 star coins. The secret technique of transforming into a bear, put on the refined demon bear skin to transform into a giant bear, invulnerable to swords and spears. The standard selling price is 150 star coins. In the Great Sun Star Raft, most of which was shrouded in fog, Zhao Chen, who was sitting on the 6th dragon throne, browsed the new content on the Jade Book product page. After thinking about it, he accidentally bought the dual cultivation technique, the Bodhisattva's joyful weaving. He had no other intentions, he just wanted to enrich his knowledge and expand his horizons. Well, just a few minutes ago, when Chekingsu and Xiang saw Zhao Chen and Qi Meng coming, they were summoned by Qi Meng as Bodhisattva before they had time to beg for mercy. The souls were hooked away, and then their ownership was handed over to Zhao Chen. Zhao Chen did not hesitate to trick the two evil disciples and sold them, and obtained many skills, as well as a blind box as memory fragments. Che Yugang actually passed the sword tactics he got from the Li family to Chekingsu intact. How did he bypass the Li family's restrictions? Could it be that he relied on the happy Bodhisattva? Let's go back and check Chekingsu's memory to see if there is any relevant content. It's a pity that Che Yugang's own technique to condense the "8 treasures" doesn't have it. Besides, it would be a loss for me to exchange the "Black Emperor's blood passing sword art by myself. It would be better for Sister Hangsha to provide me with practice items to recycle star coins, and then I can take a look at it when I exchange it for her. After thinking for a moment, Zhao Chen closed the jade book, and after a little understanding of the mystery of the bodhisattva joyful weaving, he left the star aft and his spirit returned to reality. In the space under the statue of the goddess of light, seeing him open his eyes, Qi Fimeng smiled and asked, "How is it?" Zhao Chen nodded and said, "It went smoothly. Have you sorted out their personal belongings?" This mainly refers to the bear. When Chakingsu was abducted, he was naked and had nothing except the knowledge in his head. Not much, just a bear monster skin, a magic weapon from the Xinguang temple and a revolver. The bear monster skin is mostly used to cast spells with the bear transformation secret technique, and the ordinary revolver is of no use to Zhao Chen, so he can sell them to Crossing Cha later. However, what is the function of the magic weapon from the Xinguang temple? Zhao Chen asked curiously. It's a pendant, which is probably a matching item for some spell in the Xinguang 12 methods, which can resist a taboo once. Qi Fimeng is not a professional appraiser, and can only roughly guess its function. The truly professional Zhao Chen quietly went back to the Crossing Cha to take a look, and found that the magic spell that matched this pendant was not in the fragment of the Xinguang 12 methods he had obtained, so he put it aside for the time being. It's getting late. Do you want to go into the city with me? Although it's safe here, it's not very comfortable to live in after all. Zhao Chen looked at his pocket watch and suggested. As for the wanted order on Qi Fimeng, without the Che family watching, it would be a matter of Yan Hongxia's words to cancel it. Qi Fimeng shook her head and said, "In terms of comfort, the restaurant in the city is indeed better, but it's quiet enough here, and it's a good place to practice." Seeing her insistence, Zhao Chen stopped persuading her. Although the relationship between the two seemed to be very close, they both had their own secrets and still needed to leave enough personal space. After Zhao Chen left, Qi Fimeng simply ate some dry food, then took off all her clothes, and let the light power of this secret space gather on her body. The holy and dazzling light turned into a feathered garment woven with light, and wrapped her whole body. At this moment, it was like the goddess of light from the west returned to the world. When he returned to the county city, it was completely dark. Zhao Chen came to his own restaurant. This business that was originally the Zhao family's business in the county city has also become one of his started from scratch industries. Ordered a table of wine and food and feasted on it. However, he had just tasted 2 dishes when a red figure flew in from the window of the single room and landed opposite Zhao Chen. This was not someone else, but Yan Hongxia, who was wearing a red fish official uniform. However, her face was full of trance at this time. When she saw the wine pot on the table, she actually picked it up and poured it into her mouth. Cough, cough, cough. She was obviously not good at drinking, and she was unwilling to use her magic power to force out the alcohol. Therefore, she choked and coughed after drinking only half of the pot, and her cheeks turned red. Zhao Chen reached out to grab the wine pot, frowned and asked, "Sister Hongxia, did you encounter anything?" Hearing this, Yan Hongxia looked at him with a dazed look. Even though she was a little drunk, she still spoke very carefully. "Zhao Chen, do you still remember that you have a father and a stepmother?" Her eyes were full of expectation, and she was also a little afraid of hearing a negative answer. Seeing this, Zhao Chen immediately understood what she had encountered and what state she was in. As Zhao Chen's property, Yan Hongxia also received the protection of the Dairi Crossing Cha, and her memory was not covered by the changed history, so she suddenly found that her cognition was incompatible with the surroundings. The case she reported about Bingquan Town suddenly disappeared. Not only did her colleagues not remember it, but even the Blue Lotus Sword Li Fuan, the master of magical powers, had no memory of it at all. Even Bingquan Town could not be found on any map or book. This made Yan Hongxia doubt herself, wondering if she had gone crazy, or maybe she had not escaped from the strange domain at all, and everything now was her own imagination. She felt sorry for her close friend Li Xialing's dying wishes, and then she thought that Li Xialing's 1,000 miles of sound transmission might just be her own fantasy. Just when she had nowhere to vent the depression in her chest, she sensed the breath of Zhao Chen, and then she flew directly into the private room on the top floor of the restaurant on the cloud, and drank half a pot of strong liquor. When Yan Hongxia asked that question, She was expectant, but instinctively didn't hold much hope. After all, she had received negative answers from too many acquaintances today, which made her extremely insecure about her mental state. Just when she was worried about gains and losses, she heard the man opposite her, who could be called her master, say with a smile, "Of course I remember. I'm the second young master of the Bingquan Zhao family." Hearing this, Yan Hongxue suddenly raised her head and looked at Zhao Chen's smiling face, as if she saw the light of salvation. Chapter 104 Breakthrough. If the other party only said remember, Yan Hongxue might still suspect that Zhao Chen was just perfunctory or comforting herself, but adding Bingquan Zhao family is completely different. This means that Zhao Chen, like me, remembers Bingquan Town, which does not exist in various map materials. Yan Hongxue only felt her nose sour, and coupled with Zhao Chen's instinctive attraction to her, she took advantage of the alcohol and threw herself directly into his arms, venting the mental torture she had suffered that day. Zhao Chen let her vent for a while. His eyes were full of softness. He understood this feeling. When he found something wrong on the ring, he had doubted himself. It's just that, since he had just come here not long ago, Zhao Chen's cognition of this world is not solid. No matter how it changes, it is not unacceptable. What's more, he has Qi Fimeng as his companion, so naturally he is not as collapsed as Yan Hongxue. After all, Yan Hongxue is just a girl in her early 20s, not an old monster who has experienced vicissitudes of life and can forget about everything. After crying for a while, Yan Hongxue buried her head in Zhao Chen's chest and asked sullenly, "Zhao Chen, are you really real, not my fantasy?" Zhao Chen did not reply, but directly put his hand into Yan Hongxue's collar and pretended to strip her clothes. Yan Hongxue was startled and hurriedly struggled to get up, but she pushed a few times but failed. Then she remembered that she seemed unable to go against the other party's will, and immediately asked in panic, "What are you going to do? Aren't you asking me if it's true or not? I'll let you verify it. After all, you have no experience in that area, and you can't imagine what it feels like just by imagining it, right?" Zhao Chen pressed Yan Hongxue under him, but did not take any further action, just smiled and said, I believe you are real." Yan Hongxue begged for mercy quickly, and the alcohol instantly subsided by 70% and 80%, and her IQ naturally went online again. "Zhao Chen, we all still remember the matter of Bingquan Town. Is it because the master protected us?" Yan Hongxue thought for a while and asked. "This is naturally the power of the master." Zhao Chen nodded, then let go of Yan Hongxue and let her sit up again. He reflected on what he had done just now, and felt that, even if it was to help Yan Hongxue get rid of that state of self-doubt, he had gone too far. It seems that it was because I had accumulated some inexplicable anger, so I almost lost control. And the source of that anger, it seems to be the newly exchanged dual cultivation method of Bodhisattva joyful weaving. Good guy, just reading it once, without even practicing, can it arouse people's desire? This method is a bit weird. Of course, there is also the reason that Sister Hongxue is too charming. While his thoughts were turning, Zhao Chen, in order to divert his attention, told Yan Hongxue about the historical fog that Bingquan Town had fallen into, and the plans of Song Weiyuru, Li Fuchen and Yan Wen in it, so that she had a general understanding of the whole story. So that's what happened. Yan Hongxue's eyes showed a look of realization, and she no longer had any doubts, and completely restored the style of the Hongxue sword. Speaking of which, even though I was living in a daze, I also heard about the attack on the Li family's blessed land. I didn't expect that the head of the Li family and Song Weiyuru were working together from the inside and outside. No wonder the latter was able to succeed. Even if the Li family doesn't have Deng Xuan in charge, its foundation is not comparable to that of an abandoned disciple of the upper sect. At this point, Yan Hongxue's eyes turned and she smiled. "You told me this, but the master has a task for me to do. The master intends to send someone to solve the historical fog near Chijin Mountain, so you need to investigate some intelligence." Zhao Chen said very frankly, "I'm happy to complete this task. After all, only when Bingquan Town reappears in the world, I will have the opportunity to avenge Zieling." Yan Hongxue said seriously. She and Li Zieling have a very good relationship. Before, her emotions were close to collapse. In addition to suspecting that she was delusional, a large part of the reason was that she had received Li Zieling's death message before, and she was unwilling to accept this reality. Hearing her statement, Zhao Chen nodded with satisfaction, and then mentioned the 3 investigation directions, and assigned the task of investigating Master Huang Xianjun and the Yuan sect to Yan Hongxia. In fact, there is no need for you to go to Black Wind Fort in person. Without Zibodu, I can find a reason to lead people to copy it. Yan Hongxia suggested after a little thought. If you lead people to copy, won't the things in Black Wind Fort become the government office? So, sister, don't bother. You should concentrate on investigating the master. Thinking so in his heart, Zhao Chen warned Yan Hongxia seriously on the surface, asking her not to alert the enemy. After Yan Hongxia nodded, Zhao Chen smiled and said, by the way, Sister Hongxia, although you are already the master's servant, the master will not let you do things in vain, so he prepared a reward for you. Yan Hongxia shook her head slightly after hearing this, and said, it is also my wish to complete this task. I can't ask for a reward. Sister Hongxia, don't be in a hurry to refuse, you might as well listen to the content of the reward. Zhao Chen smiled. At this point, Yan Hongxia did not refuse anymore and asked curiously, okay, I wonder what the master is going to reward me with. The master has opened up your permission to exchange items with star coins. After Zhao Chen finished speaking, he took out a piece of white paper from the drawer of the single room and wrote down the items that could be exchanged one by one. The first one on the list was the Black Emperor's Blood Sword Art. The Black Emperor's Blood Sword Art, 4,000 star coins? What are star coins? How do I get them? Yan Hongxia's eyes lit up, and she asked immediately. As a relative of the Li family, no matter how much she contributed to the Li family, she was not a direct descendant, and could only be granted to swords in the 5 emperors paying homage to the true sword. It was impossible for her to piece together the 3rd grade magical power 5 emperors paying homage to the true sword. Yan Hongxia had been trying to piece together a mid-grade magical power on her own with the Red Emperor nourishing Yuan sword key as the core. Unfortunately, she was not a genius and did not have much of a clue until she woke up and found that the quality of her true energy had been greatly improved due to dual cultivation with Zhao Chen, and she even obtained the true meaning of Taichu. This gave the plan to piece together the magical power a glimmer of hope. But since the master has the skills of the other swords in the 5 emperors paying homage to the true sword, why should she bother to piece together the magical power herself? Yan Hongxia didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt for stealing the Li family's skills. She was a little awed at first, but after the Li family's patriarch cooperated with Song Weirou to steal his family's treasures and implicated Xi Yuling, her thoughts shifted. As for what to do if she was caught stealing the skills, isn't there still the master of the Star Chariot who can protect her? Star coins, you need to exchange them with the things you practice. You bring the things here first, and I will tell you the specific price of each item one by one. As soon as Zhao Chen finished this sentence, he felt that his true energy became unusually active, and almost instantly broke through the shackles of the Renandu Meridians. Chapter 105. Are you filming? After doing business and acting as a traveling merchant, the progress of key cultivation has improved. This is not the first time Zhao Chen has encountered this, but the previous improvements were very limited, far less intense than this time, and he actually broke through the shackles of the Renandu Meridians. You should know that the Renandu Meridians are the beginning of the 8 extraordinary meridians. Once you break through, the subsequent practice is just a matter of time, and you will soon be able to complete your key. Why is this happening? I just fooled Sister Hongxia and tricked her into buying the Black Emperor's blood passing sword technique. I got the secret book for free and made a little profit from the price difference. Could it be that the essence of a traveling merchant is to trick others into spending money and then make a profit for myself? This is the core of acting. So, when I did this unintentionally, I got the feedback from the I remember that another name for traveling merchant is Xing Transportation Deputy Envoy. Could it be that this deputy envoy was originally a person who secretly took the knowledge or other goods in the Xingcha and sold them to others at a high price to make a profit when transporting? That's right. During the transportation process, there are losses and drifting, which is normal. As a deputy envoy who works on the front line, it is reasonable for him to earn some hard-earned money. No wonder the deputy envoy for transportation is also called a traveling merchant. It is to sell the goods during the transportation process to make a living. While thinking about it, Zhao Chen sat cross-legged and visualized the Xianyang Golden Tower and Jade Room map, guiding the true key through the Renandu meridians, running the great circulation, and consolidating the realm after the breakthrough. Yan Hongxia, who was a cultivator at the site, was a cultivator in the realm of magic power. How could she not notice Zhao Chen's current state? Although she didn't understand why the other party broke through while talking, she still took the initiative to protect him. At the same time, she looked at Zhao Chen with a complicated look. You know, since she cultivated true ki at the age of 14, it took her 4 years to complete her true ki at the age of 18. This has been called a genius by many people, and the boy in front of him has only achieved true ki for half a month at most, but he has already opened up the Renandu meridians. After that, as long as he practices step by step, he can complete it in a month at most. Of course, she practiced ki and refining the orifices at the same time. When the ki was perfected, the 9 orifices were also opened. Her situation was different from Zhao Chen's, but opening the 9 orifices after the ki was perfected was much easier than her way of practicing at the same time. At least the 7 orifices of eyes, nose, ears, and mouth could be opened within a year. This speed is not inferior to the core disciples of the aristocratic families and the upper sects. But that's right, as a patron of a great existence, this should be the speed of cultivation. Yan Hongxia just thought of this, and found that with the stirring of Zhao Chen's true energy, the private room was already filled with fragrance, and she didn't know, when she leaned close to him, and was held by his wrist. The Jade Girl is infused with 5 spices, and the Holy Mother celebrates the 10,000 years. It is worthy of being the 5 immortal spiritual key. As soon as this thought came up, Yan Hongxia felt Zhao Chen's true energy entering her body, and her own true energy and magic power naturally began to operate, just like a girl receiving guests to greet him. This made Yan Hongxia quite depressed, but she immediately discovered the beauty of the 5 immortal spiritual key, so she didn't deliberately stop it. So this is the so-called dual cultivation. He was not satisfied after opening up the Renandu meridians, and wanted to use my true energy to completely open up the 8 extraordinary meridians. Is it necessary to be so anxious? Although Yan Hongxia cooperated, she was not optimistic about Zhao Chen's choice. After all, neither of them knew the real dual cultivation method. If they simply relied on the natural fusion of true ki and true essence, the effect would be very general, and would get worse and worse. Sure enough, after a quarter of an hour, Zhao Chen finally finished his work and regretfully let go of Yan Hongxia's hand. Even with the help of the other party's true essence, he still stopped in front of the door of perfect true ki. You don't have to be so anxious. With your current cultivation speed, most people are already far behind. Yan Hongxia comforted him. That's because you don't know what I might encounter in 3 months. That's something that even the Dunkso and real person of the Li family couldn't handle. Zhao Chen sighed slightly. He almost wanted to practice the bodhisattva joyful weaving he exchanged for. Anyway, Yan Hongxia couldn't resist him. But Yan Hongxia was not prepared for this at a glance. He didn't want to force his own people to do things she didn't want to do. Zhao Chen still had his own bottom line after all. The next morning, Zhao Chen left the escort agency after his morning exercise and headed for the Imperial Library, where he and Miss Qi agreed to meet. As the streets were busy, there were many people, stalls, and vendors. Tang Hilu, the rhythmic shouting, made Zhao Chen stop. He remembered that Miss Qi liked this kind of sweet and sour snacks very much. She always ordered similar desserts when she was in the restaurant before. If he brought it to her, she would be very happy. So Zhao Chen unconsciously caught up with the vendor selling Tang Hilu. As he walked, he reached out and took out copper coins from his arms. Turning the corner, he suddenly saw a lot of people gathered in a circle. The vendor selling Tang Hilu was so happy that he stood there and didn't move. Is this a fun thing to watch? Zhao Chen looked at the crowd and sighed that the people of the Great Celestial Empire have always had the tradition of watching fun, even in the Great Xia dynasty. So he didn't rush to buy Tang Hilu and looked inside. There was a confrontation. No, To be more precise, a young man in gorgeous clothes and his men were confronting a flying sword. Not far behind the flying sword, there was a crying girl. Oh, what a sin. This young man is really too much. Someone next to him sighed and told his friends what happened. Zhao Chen didn't need to ask, he already understood 90% of it. It turned out that the crying girl was the daughter of a nearby shopkeeper. She often helped her father to attract business on weekdays and inevitably had to sacrifice a little bit of her beauty. But this was just a normal reception, not a girl doing flesh trade. But who knew that today she met a young man who was tempted by her beauty and threw out 100 strings of money to take the girl away. Her father was not willing to do it, begging for mercy and bowing, but the young man just didn't let go and asked his men to beat the shopkeeper and drag the girl away. His arrogant behavior naturally angered the knights in the city, so a flying sword descended from the sky, directly forced the young man's men to retreat, and saved the girl. The story was very cliched, nothing more than a hero saving a beautiful girl, but Zhao Chen's eyes gradually became strange. Because he could easily see that the girl was not really crying, and the so-called noble young man in fancy clothes had less than 10 strings of cash in total, and almost all of his jade pendants and hairpins were fakes. The most important thing is, a group of thugs who are not even in the true energy realm, relying only on the sticks in your hands. How can you confront a master who can control a flying sword? Is this a movie? Chapter 106 Li Yunfeng. Who disturbed grandpa's good deeds? The noble young man looked at the flying sword not far away. His face changed, and he asked. It was just that the acting was a bit too much, and the expression was not very natural. Not only Zhao Chen saw through it at a glance, but even the people watching the excitement nearby also murmured in a low voice. Perhaps seeing that the matter was about to be exposed, the flying sword jumped up straight on its own, and with a snap, it hit the young man's cheek hard. The young man's face suddenly turned red, and he spat out a few bloody teeth, and a cold snort sounded immediately. HMPH, if you dare to do evil here again, I will chop off your head. The noble young man showed a fearful expression on his face. He looked around, and didn't say anything harsh, but left quickly with a group of men. Seeing this scene, the girl was stunned for a few seconds, and then immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the flying sword to express her gratitude. At this time, the flying sword took out a silver note from somewhere and threw it to the girl. At the same time, the voice from before also sounded again. Use these to heal your father. The girl happily took the money, and seeing that the flying sword was about to leave again, she hurriedly said loudly, please leave your name, benefactor. But the flying sword left straight away, and no one responded. Seeing this, the girl showed a silly look and said, doing chivalrous deeds without leaving a name. This is a true chivalrous man. At this time, a bystander next to him suddenly said, that sword seems to be the Kingan sword of the direct descendants of the Zhang Li family. There are not many people in the Li family who wear such a sword. After hearing this, another person suddenly said, I heard that the grandson of the Li family's patriarch, the son-in-law of Cheyugang, Mr. Li Yunfeng, came to our human. Maybe it was that young man who did it. As expected of the son-in-law of Wanjia Shengfo, he is also a chivalrous man. Haha, the noble young master performed too hard, and there was no nobility in his body. He looked more like a gang thug. I would give him 2 points at most. The tone of those informed people was too exaggerated, but better than that young master. 3 points. The rescued girl sang and recited well later, but it was too fake when she started to wipe her tears. Well, 6 points, barely passing. Looking at the farce in front of him, Zhao Chen gave scores to all the actors with great interest. At the same time, he glanced at a restaurant facing the street, and soon found several familiar figures. At a table by the window, sitting in the main seat was a very beautiful woman with heroic spirit between her eyebrows. She was the Sakura dragon fairy Zenkingan, and on both sides of her were sitting a man. The man on the right looked pale, and had heavy dark circles under his eyes. He was the green robe young master Li Changsheng who had hosted the business road competition before. On the left hand side, there is a young man. His long hair is not tied up, just casually draped. His eyes are shining, and he looks proud. There should be other people at the table, but Zhao Chen can't see them from his angle. At this time, Zheng Qinggan's eyes cast over, and after the two exchanged glances, Zhao Chen did not stay, and bought a candied horse from the vendor, and then continued to walk towards the library. At this time in the restaurant, the young man with loose hair smiled at Zheng Qinggan attentively and said, "I didn't expect that such bullying of men and women could happen in human." Yunfeng was indignant, and punished them slightly. "I'm sorry to make the fairy laugh." Zheng Qinggan nodded coldly without answering. However, she complained in her heart, "Do you really think Zheng Qinggan is an innocent young lady who can't even see through such a simple trick? She is just inexperienced in the martial arts world, so she was calculated by the three old foxes Song Weiyuru, Yang Wen, and Li Fuchen. She is not stupid. Does this person think that he can win Zheng Qinggan's favor by making such a play? Although Zheng Qinggan likes to be chivalrous, she did it deliberately to maintain her humanity. In fact, it has nothing to do with chivalry." And the green robe young man Li Changsheng on the side was also embarrassed by this. He wanted to dig a crack in the ground and crawl into it, so he had to drink silently. He deeply felt that he should not come to the banquet today. It was too embarrassing. But he couldn't not come, because he was worried that Li Yunfeng would really bump into the Sakura Dragon Fairy and be killed by her casually. It would be a bad ending at that time, so he, as an elder, had to come to calm the scene. In the library, Zhao Chen came to sit next to Qi Meng, watching her happily eating the candied horse he brought. He grabbed her wrist directly and asked in his heart, "What's going on over there?" It's Che Yugang's son-in-law, Li Yunfeng, the grandson of the head of the Li family, who came to Human to deal with the things left over by the Che family. Because the Che family does have members of the Xinjiang temple, and the messed up things done by Che Yugang himself were displayed by his niece in front of the masters of magical powers. This matter has become a shame for the Li family, so it is difficult to deal with Green Lotus Sword Li Fuan, so they can only call Li Yunfeng, who is married to the Che family. They are still concealing the news of Che Yugang's death from the outside world. They only said that he was seriously injured by an unfamiliar magical power and has been sent to the state capital for recuperation. It is estimated that it will be announced in a few months. And the people of the Che family and all their collections, after being inspected, were also handed over to Li Yunfeng. Having said this, Qi Meng swallowed the last candied horse before continuing to transmit the message in secret that Li Yunfeng is also a pervert. He happened to see Zheng Qinggan going to Li Fuan to ask questions yesterday, and then he shamelessly stuck to her. Oh, among the people who killed Zheng Qinggan was his grandfather Li Fuchen. Since he offered to give it to me so proactively, I naturally have to accept it with a smile. What's more, Qi Meng looked into Zhao Chen's eyes and said with a smile, "Before the Shifu temple incident, I promised to compensate you with the Che family. But in the end, we only caught Che Qingsu. How is that possible? So, now is the perfect time to let Li Yunfeng spit out all the treasures of the Che family for you. You are really an honest and trustworthy girl." Zhao Chen sighed, and then asked in his heart, puzzled, "Li Yunfeng is pestering Zheng Qinggan. What does he want to do? Isn't he married?" Li Yunfeng is not favored among the many grandsons of the Li family's patriarch, and his cultivation is also very average, so he only married into the family of a cultivator in the magic realm. After he cultivated his magic power with the help of elixirs a month ago, he planned to change his wife, but before he had time to do it, he encountered the matter of the Che family. It provided him with a ready-made excuse to divorce his wife and marry another one. After a pause, Qi Meng picked up a book to cover up, so as not to be noticed by the scene of the two holding wrists and laughing foolishly, and then continued, and after he learned about Zheng Qinggan's background, he had more delusions of becoming the son-in-law of aristocratic family. Don't expose yourself because of this. After all, with Zheng Qinggan's personality, she shouldn't pay attention to him. Zhao Chen said carefully. I understand, but he took the initiative to use the Che family's things to please me, so I can't refuse, right? What's more, if we want to know the information about the Dark Son of the Li family, we may have to rely on him. Although he doesn't remember anything, there may be cultivators in the Li family who have cultivated high-grade magical powers who have noticed something unusual. Using him to ask questions can reduce a lot of suspicion. Chapter 107, Gathering of Practitioners. After listening to Qi Meng's words, Zhao Chen said thoughtfully, "Are you planning to let him remember the matter about the dark son of the Li family, and then ask through his mouth?" "That's right." Qi Meng nodded, thinking that it would be easier to talk to Erlang, and then asked with a smile, "What do you think? Should we arrange an adventure for him, or find a recluse master to take him in as a disciple? After all, there must be a reason to suddenly realize that history has changed. No matter which one, he will most likely face the investigation of the Li family's magical powers afterwards, right?" Zhao Chen thought for a moment, and suddenly asked, "What kind of person is Li Yunfeng?" Qi Meng rolled his eyes, as if he had guessed what Zhao Chen wanted to do, and answered in secret voice, "As far as I know, although his evil deeds are not obvious on the surface, he secretly keeps several horse bandits to rob treasures and beauties for him. Even the Che family has been ordered by him, and many towns and villages have suffered greatly. However, due to the face of the Li family, the government dare not intervene. Although Daxia is nominally a unified dynasty, it actually relies on practicing families and sects to rule the world. The Li family has ruled Ganzhou for hundreds of years, and has done a lot of good things to benefit the civilians, but there are also many scums in the family. Well, this is the information found by the Zheng families left behind personnel in Ganzhou, and it should be accurate. As one of the 12 aristocratic families of Daxia and the top force in the world, the Zheng family naturally has its own strongholds in various places. However, Ganzhou is remote, and only the provincial capital Zhanghai has set up relevant institutions, but there are none in Human. That's easy. After he delivers all the things to the Che family, Meng, you will find a chance to capture him. Later, I will naturally arrange a hermit master for him to make him obedient," Zhao Chen said confidently. Although Zhao Chen and Miss Qi had only cultivated the true Qi in the refining orifices, they had determined the fate of magic cultivator in just a few words, and neither of them felt that there was anything wrong. After all, with their hacks, ordinary magical powers were no match for them. The two shook hands and talked for a while until the administrator couldn't stand it anymore and came over to remind them to be careful of the impact. Only then did they come to their senses and get up and leave the library. After all, their way of communication, based on mind reading and secret voice transmission, seemed to outsiders to be smiling at each other with affection. After leaving the library, Zhao Chen invited them, "By the way, Meng, my caravan will set off for Dunhuang tomorrow, and will pass by Blackwind Castle on the way. Do you want to join us?" "Of course. And I also want to go back to Dunhuang to take a look. I left in a hurry at the time, and didn't arrange many things." Qi Meng nodded slightly, and then seemed to think of something, and teased, "After I join your team, how are you going to explain it to others?" Zhao Chen glanced at her and said, "Can't this young master just need a girl to warm my bed? I don't care." Qi Meng covered her mouth and laughed, "But how are you going to tell your sister Hangsha? After all, in the eyes of others, you are her little lover." Qi Meng didn't know the true relationship between Zhao Chen and Yan Hangsha, and said this with a bit of tentative meaning. "Don't worry, Hangsha is very generous." Zhao Chen patted her hand and said meaningfully. Qi Meng blinked and inexplicably felt like she was a little one, so she secretly intercepted a little of her own breath and left it on Zhao Chen. So after lunch, when the generous sister Hangsha came to the martial arts hall to find Zhao Chen, the first sentence was, "You have the breath left by a girl." After saying that, she was about to use the breath-seeking technique to investigate. She didn't think too much about it, but out of professional habit, she was worried that Zhao Chen was being calculated. Wait. Zhao Chen also discovered the hidden breath at this time, so he quickly stopped. Just kidding. The last time she used the breath-seeking technique to investigate Wang Daoye, Yan Hangsha almost died suddenly, and the things involved in Miss Qi were even more terrifying. If something went wrong, Zhao Chen had no confidence that he could save her. Yan Hangsha stopped immediately and looked at Zhao Chen in confusion. "That is the breath left behind by the relatives of the Lord's allies. Don't worry about it." After Zhao Chen briefly explained, he immediately changed the subject and said, "Sister Hangsha, are you coming to me to bring cultivation items in exchange for star coins?" Yan Hongxia looked at him suspiciously for a few times, but did not ask any further questions. She followed his words and said, I used my merits over the years to exchange for several methods of practicing magic from the Taoist library. Although they are not systematic and cannot be used to condense magical powers, they should be worth some star coins. After saying that, she unpacked the package she was carrying and took out several secret books from it. In fact, the magic spells exchanged from the Taoist office cannot be leaked, but since the examiner is not here, the library is currently in charge of Yan Hongxia herself, so she simply embezzled. If it weren't for the fact that taking out the secret books and flipping through them would leave traces, she could have saved herself the effort. Round light mirror, sand escape technique, yellow wind escape technique, 3 yang talisman sword technique, fallen chant, soul shaking shout. Looking at the 5 secret books in front of him, Zhao Chen concentrated and boarded the Great Sun Star Raft, and finally offered a total of 3,000 star coins. Among them, the most valuable are the Yinsha magic fallen chant and the Yang Gang magic soul shaking shout, because with these 2 spells as a core, they can form a 5th grade magical power soul shaking and desolate that specializes in the soul. Unfortunately, the version Yan Hongxia got only had the method of refining spells, but the most core part of the magical power was missing. Otherwise it would definitely be worth more than this price. It's really not enough. Yan Hongxia sighed, but she was prepared, and said to Zhao Chen, there will be a gathering of cultivators in Xiaodakang Mountain outside Human City in the afternoon, which is the one I plan to send you to be an undercover. At this point, her tone was inevitably a little sad. At that time, she coerced and lured Zhao Chen to agree to this dangerous task, but she didn't expect that she would lose everything. After adjusting her mood, Yan Hongxia continued, you can buy a lot of cultivation items there. I plan to take 1 or 2 magic tools and present them to the master in exchange for star coins. Zhao Chen, do you want to go with me? Cultivation gathering? Zhao Chen was a little tempted. He really needed something that could enhance his strength now, and magic tools were a good choice. However, for the sake of caution, he still asked about the details of the gathering. At the end, he asked in confusion, why is the gathering held in the afternoon? In the novel storybook, doesn't it always start in the evening? Yan Hongxia smiled and replied, it's easy to encounter weird when traveling at night, so you have to give people time to stay away from the gathering place, so the gathering usually ends before the sun sets. So that's it. After the transaction at night, the person holding the treasure doesn't even dare to run away. That's too tragic, Zhao Chen suddenly realized, and then asked Yan Hongxia to wait for a while, and he went back to the bedroom, changed into a black robe, and put on a black short cloak. Finally, Zhao Chen took out a silver mask and covered his face above the nose. This was the outfit he had prepared long ago, waiting to be used when doing something unknown at night, but he didn't expect to use it now in the daytime. After doing all this, he walked out of his bedroom and then saw Yan Hongxia wearing a western-style cake skirt with a veil on her face. This was no longer her original appearance, and even her hair turned red. If her breath was not too familiar, Zhao Chen would not have dared to recognize her. This is the disguise technique that came from the West. Although it is not a natural spell and the conditions for using it are very harsh, the effect is still good. And its taboo is that it cannot be used at night, otherwise it is more likely to be devoured by the weird. It is said that there was a duke's daughter in the West who was abused by her stepmother. She had no dress to attend the ball and had to use the disguise technique. As a result, she was unable to remove it before night fell, and eventually her soul was devoured, and her body was occupied by evil spirits. There will be additional updates this morning. Chapter 108 Magical Instruments. This sounds a bit like a weird version of Cinderella, but considering that the history before ancient times in Daxia was a novel style, could it be that the contemporary history in the West was a dark fairy tale? While thinking about it, Zhao Chen also remembered that this disguise technique had actually been included in the Star Chariot along with the small convenient life spells such as the cleansing technique, the fireproof spell, the dust avoiding technique, and the water drawing technique when he sold Yan Hongxia's knowledge. He didn't exchange it before. After all, this kind of spell is not like the Red Emperor Yang Yuan sword key. Yan Hongxia can teach it directly, but he didn't have time to learn it. On the other side, after briefly introducing her disguise magic, Yan Hongxia also looked at Zhao Chen's outfit and nodded slightly. It seems that you have done enough to cover yourself up, which is good. There are all kinds of people in that gathering, so it's better not to expose your identity casually. As she spoke, she seemed to remember something, and after saying wait a moment, she flew out of the martial arts hall on a cloud. About 3 or 4 minutes later, she returned to Zhao Chen's room with a black metal cane. Take this. This way, it will match my outfit better. Pretend to be a pair of practitioners from the west. Zhao Chen took the metal cane and waved it a few times, thinking that this thing could be used as a weapon. After seeing that they had disguised their identities, Yan Hongxia's feet were covered with clouds, and she took Zhao Chen into the air and flew out of the city, finally landing in front of a hill more than 10 miles away from Human. There is a large manor on the mountain, with colorful ribbons flying across the sky, the sound of stringed instruments and bamboos constantly ringing in the ears, and the music of decadence filling the air. Obviously, this is a high-end entertainment place. Seeing this, Zhao Chen asked in surprise, could it be that the monks chose such a place for their gathering? No, they just used this place to cover their tracks. Otherwise, it would be too conspicuous for so many people to sneak into a manor in the mountains. Although the Dao officials knew what was going on here, they didn't want to be treated as fools. Yan Hongxia answered as she led Zhao Chen into a mountain path, and then into the interior of the mountain through an inconspicuous cave. Although Zhao Chen's eyes were not open, and he did not have dark vision, his spiritual perception could illuminate a 3-meter range around him, which did not affect his progress in this dark cave. After walking for about 4 or 5 minutes, his front suddenly opened up, and an open area appeared. In the center of the area, a piece of warm sunwood was burning, emitting a green light in the darkness, making some human figures look very creepy. Not only is warm sunwood resistant to burning, it also has a certain effect of exorcising evil spirits, which can reduce the possibility of weirdness coming. Although weirdness appears more often in the middle of the night, it is not completely absent during the day, especially in this environment, where the sun cannot shine. Yan Hongxia explained briefly, and took Zhao Chen to join the circle in front of them. Maybe it was early, and there were not many people arriving at this time, only about 7 or 8. Most of the unclear figures chose to cover their faces, wearing masks, veils, and hoods. Under the bleak green firelight, they looked like monsters. Is the organizer mentally unhealthy? This doesn't look like a proper rally. Even if you want to avoid the eyes and ears of the government, there is no need to make the atmosphere like this, right? Zhao Chen just complained silently when he saw a woman in tights and a rather exquisite figure said, "Red hair, you haven't been to the rally for a month, right? Did you find the eye-opening elixir you promised to help me find last time?" As for Zhao Chen, she just glanced at him casually and didn't ask any questions. After all, Daxia didn't have many taboos about cultivators' gatherings. There were several open gathering places in the county town, but in such places, one had to register one's identity, explain the origin of the goods, and collect taxes. In comparison, independent cultivators naturally prefer this kind of private gathering. After all, even if they are caught by Taoist officials, as long as they have no bad records, they will only be fined at most. After hearing her question, Yan Hongxia smiled and pointed at Zhao Chen beside her and said, "Peony, the people I brought this time can solve your problem." Zhao Chen stepped forward, looked at the people who wrapped themselves tightly, and said in a hoarse and low voice, "Hello everyone, you can call me Changzheng. Choose a code name." This was the key point Yan Hongxia had reminded us of on the way here. Changzheng corresponds to Taipei Crossing, or Morning Star. It has some vague connection with his name, but not closely, and it is easy to be misled to the Li family. After all, the Li family's King Lion Sword energy is based on the sharpness of Taipei Crossing. The petite woman nodded and said, "Changzheng, you have an eye-opening elixir in your hand." "I don't have the elixir," Zhao Chen responded, and seeing that Peony's delicate eyebrows were wrinkled, he took out a small box and revealed the eyeball left after Fang Zhu's death. "The evil eye of Jiaozi?" Exclamation mark. "You actually have such a good thing." Peony, who was about to attack, changed her expression instantly. She obviously knew the goods. as an item for opening the eyes. The effect of Yazizimu is actually similar to the effects of Xian Kang Dan and Xian Shi Ting Dan, which are publicly sold by the upper sect Dending Zion Zang. It may even have some more magical effects, but it has the disadvantage of being connected to Yazi at the level of fate. But as Yan Hongxia said at the beginning, if you want a demon like Yazi to look at you with a straight eye, you must at least have supernatural power, and how can a casual cultivator think so far? In a county, how many supernatural powers can a casual cultivator have? As for the elixirs, refined by the Danding Zion Zhang, the annual output is limited, and most of them are divided up by other families and upper sects. Even the Li family, a prestigious family, can't get much. Occasionally, a few are sold at a very high price. Casual cultivators and disciples of small sects tend to choose some elixirs with significant side effects to assist in refining the orifices, and the success rate is actually quite touching. So when the Yazizimu came out, not only Mutant, but also several other people were ready to move. Although they had already opened their eyes, they also had family members and disciples. I will offer 500 strings of cash. This is the price that Red Hair and I have already agreed on. Seeing this, Mutant hurriedly spoke up, intending to confirm the deal first. At this time, a figure hiding in the shadows slowly spoke up, but the Yazizimu was brought by Changjeng, and the agreement between you and Red Hair is invalid. As he said that, he looked at Zhao Chen again, and pointed at himself. You can call me Shadow, I will offer 600 strings of cash. Mutant gritted her teeth when she heard this, and then looked at Zhao Chen and Yan Hongxia in the same way and said, what do you say? I plan to exchange the Yazizimu for a protective magic weapon. Those who have such magic weapons will be given priority. Zhao Chen said calmly. With Wan Daoye, he has no worries about attacking, but his own safety is not guaranteed. But defensive magic weapons are rare, so after his voice fell, there was a moment of silence. Finally, the peony hesitated for a long time, bit her lip and said, I have a purple ribbon robe, but it is a gangsha magical weapon. If you want to exchange it, you have to give me at least 1,500 strings of cash, or something of equal value. Magic instruments are generally divided into 3 levels. The first is inferior magic instruments, or pseudo-magic instruments. Most of them are items that assist the true key, the refining monks to use spells, or resist taboos. They are of low value, generally ranging from 50 to 600 strings of cash, depending on the specific function. For example, Zhao Chen's control heart ring is a prop for the Kai character control heart method in the 12 methods of heart light. The second is the gangsha magic instruments. Most of them are items that cultivators have to give up their own life spells. Not to mention their powerful power, the materials used must contain corresponding Ganki and Shaki, and the price is naturally very high, generally starting at 2,000 strings of cash, such as Miss Key's Chang'an ribbon. The third is the magical instruments, which are divided into several types. Let's not talk about them for now. In short, Zhao Chen did not expect that someone would use a gangsha magic instrument to exchange for an awakening pill, which is completely unreasonable. So he and Yan Hongxia looked at each other, and a thought flashed through their minds. The origin of this so-called purple ribbon robe might be very problematic. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 News. Purple Ribbon Vestments is a widely spread spell. Its origin is unknown, but almost all the powerful families have it in their collection. Since it cannot be integrated with most spells, it is rarely condensed into a life spell by the monks, and most of them are refined into magic tools. However, nowadays, almost all the forces that master the purple ribbon vestments will not pass it on to others. Even if they are made into magic tools, they will not be sold to others, but will be used by their own people. The reason is that the purple ribbon vestments are comprehensive and can defend against any type of attack. There are almost no shortcomings, and they can only be broken by force. So, just like a certain superpower in the previous life controlling bulletproof vests, the powerful attack spells of the major forces may still be passed on, but the purple ribbon vestments are suppressed. In fact, it is not just the purple ribbon vestments, all powerful defensive spells are the same. Therefore, the price of the Gangsha magical instrument containing top level defensive spells is about 70% to 80% higher than other types of magic instruments. However, the peony in front of him only asked for an additional price of 1,500 strings of cash. Considering the value of the Zhao Zimu itself of about 500 strings of cash, the asking price is quite low. This obviously means that they are eager to get rid of it, so Zhao Chen and Yan Hongxia suspected that there was something wrong with the origin of this magic instrument. But even if there are problems, Zhao Chen was inevitably tempted. After all, this is the top level self-defense item he urgently needs. The price is so low, how could he give it up? No matter what the cause and effect of this magic instrument is, he will take it. No matter how big the trouble behind it is, can it be bigger than the special mission that will inevitably be encountered by the Dongsuan 3 months later? The only problem now is that I don't have 1,500 strings of cash. After thinking for a while, Zhao Chen said carefully, "Do you need a method to practice your natal spell? Do you have a method to practice your natal spell? How many and what are they?" The slender female cultivator peony asked anxiously with her eyes lit up. As a casual cultivator, she obviously did not have a complete Taoist inheritance. Even though she had already reached the second level of magic power, she only knew some common things that had little power, such as the immobilization method and the golden light spell. But even if she didn't know how the supernatural power was cultivated, she knew that the space for natal spells was limited, and such spells were not suitable for refining spell talisman seeds. A Yin-Sha spell Desolate Chant and a Yang-Gang spell Soul Shaking Hearing. Zhao Chen took out the spells that Yan Hongxia had given him not long ago. It was not easy to be a casual cultivator, and he didn't cheat it too much. After all, these two spells could form a 5th grade supernatural power Soul Shaking, but they lacked the key method, and she had to find it herself. Deal. After reading Zhao Chen's introduction, the peony immediately agreed without bargaining. Scarcity makes things valuable. Although Zhao Chen estimated that 1 star coin and 1 string of money were worth about the same. In fact, some things would be much more expensive. Since both parties were secretly communicating, the others did not know what they had traded. They only saw that both parties took out a package and handed it to each other. Yan Hongxia's spiritual consciousness probed into the package handed over by Peony, carefully checked it, and nodded to Zhao Chen after a moment. After a cursory reading of the secret book, Peony also put it into her broad chest with satisfaction. After the transaction was completed, Yan Hongxia also began her shopping spree. No matter it was talismans, magic tools, elixirs, or exercises, as long as it was related to cultivation, and not included in Xingcha, she accepted everything. It was not until Zhao Chen coughed, reminding her that she had enough star coins that she stopped. However, this operation also ended the transaction phase of the gathering ahead of schedule, and turned to the intelligence exchange phase. At this time, Zhao Chen also had a certain impression of the members participating in the gathering. First, the organizer of the gathering, a man who called himself Yellow Turban Warrior. He was tall, had a rough voice, and spoke a little rudely. But in sharp contrast to his body shape, this man seemed to be particularly fond of evil and strange things. The 2 talismans he sold to Yan Hongxia were all evil things. No wonder Yan Hongxia thought this guy was a cultist, and sold her information. Of course, Yan Hongxia later learned from Zhao Chen that this was all a misunderstanding. In addition, the layout of this venue was also done by this Yellow Turban Warrior. In addition to this eccentric organizer, as well as Peony and Shadow, the people who came this time also included the Baron, who was dressed in gorgeous clothes, wearing a tall crown and a golden mask on his face, the Black Cat, who was dressed like a witch and wearing a pointed hat like Yan Hongxia, the painter with oil paint all over his face, like a clown, the craftsman with grey hair and a wine jug. Now that the transaction is over, let's exchange information, the Yellow Turban Warrior announced after looking around. I'll go first. The Baron coughed. Songwayuru, the abandoned disciple of the 10,000 Beasts sect, broke into the shy and blessed land of the Zhang Li family, not only injured 3 or 4 magical monks, but also seized a treasure, and finally successfully retreated. The head of the Li family, Li Fuchen, chased him all the way, and finally both disappeared in the depths of the desert, and it is very likely that they were lost in the endless desert. The Li family has offered a reward. Anyone who can provide reliable information about Li Fuchen or Song Wuyuru can choose one of the swords from the 5 emperors' true swordsmanship. Haha. The Li family suffered such a big loss? This is good news. We should have a drink. The woman codenamed Black Cat stretched lazily, and her tone became cheerful, but it's better not to get involved in the affairs of the supernatural masters, otherwise you won't know how they died. The shadow on the side said grimly, Song Wuyuru defeated many supernatural masters of the Li family, and escaped from the Blessed Land. It's impossible that he was not injured. Maybe we can join forces. He didn't finish his words, but everyone understood what he meant. Peony sighed and said, you'd better save your energy. The power of supernatural masters is not something we can speculate. Several other people also expressed their opinions, which were nothing more than gloating over the Li family's misfortune, or coveting Song Wuyuru. During this process, Zhao Chen just listened quietly, and roughly judged the strength and status of several people from their random conversations. Peony is about the 2nd or 3rd level of magic power. She has seen the magic monks take action, but she should not have any background, otherwise she would not be so excited when facing 2 spells. Is her ability to obtain the purple ribbon robe related to the magic she has seen? Shadow should be about the same strength as Peony, but it is obvious that he does not know what the magic monk means, and he is more confident, or arrogant. He is unruly. Is he the leader of a mountain stronghold or horse bandits? Baroness' strength is unknown, but from the way other people look at him, we know that his strength is not bad, and his identity is probably not low, otherwise he would not know so much about the internal affairs of the Li family. At least he would not know so quickly. Is he a court official, or a member of the Li family? Black Cat should be very strong, which can be seen from her more casual sitting posture, and she seems to be at odds with the Li family, and is very happy to see the Li family suffer. Craftsman is probably the weakest one, and it is very likely that he is not a magic monk, so he doesn't talk much, but listens more. As for the yellow turban warrior, nothing can be seen at all, except that his taste is rather creepy. Just as Zhao Chen was labeling everyone present one by one, a piece of information shared by Black Cat caught his attention. A new town has appeared at the junction of southwest Yangzhou and the 100 kingdoms of the western regions, just like Dunhuang. Someone found clues to the great magical power of Kunlun Kyanghe lineage. All worlds come there. Update progress 1/45. Chapter 110 Phoenix. The 9 ancient Kunlun veins are Kunlun, Yaoqi, Kyanghe, Biyu, Ziki, Zuanpu, Yuanying, Langfeng, and Qianyang. Among them, the Kyanghe vein is good at swordsmanship, and the great magical power of Zhu Xiangshalin inherited by it is also a first-class swordsmanship magical power. After studying in the library these days, coupled with Miss Key's occasional popular science, Zhao Chen is no longer as ignorant of the cultivation world as he was at the beginning of the time travel. He clearly knows what kind of bloody storm will be set off when such a first-class magical power is born. The reason why the Li family was able to win the 5 emperors paying homage to the truth magical power in Dunhuang was, on the one hand, because the classics they obtained lacked the Dongsuan part, and on the other hand, it was the result of compromise among various forces. It can be said that the Li family was quite lucky. I just don't know what the situation is in the town where the southwest Yangzhou was born this time. If it is similar to Dunhuang, it is okay to only have the classics before Dongsuan. Otherwise I'm afraid that a fight is inevitable. While Zhao Chen's thoughts were drifting away, the others also came back to their senses from this shocking news. Shadow looked at Black Cat eagerly and asked repeatedly, is the news reliable? Where did it appear in Yangzhou? What is the attitude of the Flower God sect to this? The Flower God sect is one of the upper sects, and its influence radiates to the 3 southwestern states. Therefore, although it is not located in Yangzhou, it has the greatest voice in Yangzhou. Reliable, but the specific location is not clear. People just suddenly remembered that there is a town called Boxian at the junction of Yangzhou and the western regions. It is similar to the time before Dunhuang was born. Based on experience, it may take half a year for the town to really appear in the world. However, many abandoned villages have suddenly appeared in Yangzhou, and some people have found relevant records of the Qianghua sect and the great supernatural power of Zhu Xiangxilin in them. Black Cat responded lazily, and then said, as for the Flower God sect, there is no reaction on the surface, but several sects and families affiliated with it have sent people to Yangzhou. Shadow's eyes brightened when he heard that, and he smiled. That is to say, we casual cultivators may not be without a chance. Black Cat glanced at Shadow with a smile, and said nothing more. Peony was also very moved by what she heard. Besides, she had been in quite a bit of trouble recently, and was preparing to go out to avoid it. Perhaps Southwest Yangzhou would be a good choice. After thinking for a moment, she looked at the grey-haired drunk craftsman and said, I would like to entrust you to make a pair of muskets. The specific requirements are here. As she spoke, she took out a piece of letter paper and handed it over. After taking it, the craftsman glanced at it for a few times, nodded and said, it's not a big problem, but it will take a week to complete, and I'll deliver it to the usual place. 1 week, can it be faster? I need it within 3 days. Peony frowned and said, 3 days is impossible, it will take at least 5 days. In addition, the price will be increased by 30%. Mutant thought for a moment, and finally nodded and said, okay. After the two reached a consensus, the atmosphere fell silent again, leaving only the green flames on the warm sunwood. The yellow turban warrior sitting in the first seat looked around. Is there anyone else who wants to exchange information or entrust a task? Me. The painter, who looked like a clown, but had no sense of existence, stood up. I want to issue a commission to find a woman with the same magical power. She is a believer of Tao Wu and a core member of the Taxi Phoenix family. A believer of Tao Wu, a member of the Four Evils Hall? Out of professional habit, Yan Hongxia asked directly. Yes, she abandoned the belief in the Phoenix and joined the Four Evils Hall. The people of the Phoenix family have been hunting her down, and recently they finally confirmed that she is in Ganzhou. As he spoke, the painter distributed the portraits of the characters that had been prepared long ago. The woman being hunted by the Western Phoenix family, the people of the Four Evils Hall. Could it be that she was killed by Wang Daoye and turned into a cocoon and sold by me? Was it her failed nirvana after her death that alarmed the Phoenix family and made them come here? It seems that people who died in Bingquan Town early in the morning will not be forgotten. Of course, it may also be because the materials left over from her failed nirvana were sold to Xingcha by me. As Zhao Chen's thoughts turned, he looked at the sketch in his hand and found that it was the face of a young Western woman with delicate features and beautiful blonde hair. This painter is really good, and the painting is both realistic and realistic. Although it doesn't look like the Phoenix I saw. Well, the lady must have disguised her appearance when she was active in Daxia, otherwise it would be too conspicuous. I understand. I will mobilize people to find her. What Zhao Chen didn't expect was that the first person to respond was the yellow turban warrior. Yan Hongxia whispered in Zhao Chen's ear. The yellow turban warriors have always shown hatred towards the Four Evils Hall, so I asked you to sell the Yazzie Evil Eyes. Having the Yazzie Evil Eyes means killing a Yazzie family member, which can win the favor of the organizer, the yellow turban warriors. Zhao Chen nodded thoughtfully, then deliberately showed an interested expression and asked, by the way, what is the woman's name? Jane Lana Phoenix. This is her real name. But I have to remind you that she is very good at divination and anti-divination. It is a fool's dream to find her by calculating her real name. The painter replied while reminding. It's really her. Did the Phoenix family come here to recover her awakened Phoenix bloodline power? While thinking, Zhao Chen asked again, what reward can I get after finding her? The Phoenix family is also well known in the West. Not only does it occupy a country, but there are also many sunrise level wizards in the family, which is equivalent to the true body of the second level of Dangshan in Daxia. I think they will not be too stingy. The painter took a deep breath. A complete inheritance that directly points to the realm of supernatural powers can be cultivated into an 8th grade supernatural power peach symbol sword key. This is not attractive to Zhao Chen. Although he does not have many supernatural power techniques, he has not fallen to the point of practicing 8th grade supernatural powers. At most, he can sell the Star Chariot for money. but this condition is different for others. In Zhao Chen's opinion, except for Black Cat and Baron, the rest of the people, including Yellow Turban Warrior, seemed to be very tempted and said that they would let people pay attention. After that, the meeting came to an end. After seeing that no one was communicating, Yellow Turban Warrior announced the adjournment. After explaining how to obtain the time of the next meeting, everyone left the mountain one by one and found that the sun had already set and it was evening. The manor on the mountain was also at its busiest time. People came here in groups of 3 or 4 to spend the night, but there were also many people who wanted to go back to the city to rest after a day of entertainment. The partygoers blended in with the latter and were not conspicuous at all. And Zhao Chen was once again taken to the sky by Dairi Xingcha. Chapter 111 Departure. More than 300 miles east of Yumen, in a small town called Jinchang. The painter who arrived here before it was completely dark washed off the paint on his face, revealing a high nose and deep eyes, with a face that was obviously Western style. However, this was not noticeable in Jinchang City, because this city was built by the Westerners who stayed in Ganzhou when the 100 kingdoms in the western regions disappeared. Although after 8,000 years of reproduction and development, the people here have long been the same as the Daksha people in terms of language and culture, but the difference can still be seen in appearance. The painter walked along the bustling street to a 3-story building and rang the doorbell. A moment later, he saw a man in his 30s in the living room of the small building. He was wearing a blue suit that was out of tune with Daksha clothes and a white handkerchief on his chest. "Levy, have you sent out the mission commission of the Phoenix family?" the man said. "Yes, Lord Garland." The painter, that is, Levy, bowed and replied, "Very good. But this is enough. Although the Phoenix family has a good relationship with our family, our primary task in coming to the east is to find the son of prophecy of the tribe. And the people of the Phoenix family may not be willing to let us interfere too much." At this point, Garland, whose face was extremely pale, paused and asked, "Can you start painting your latest prophecy painting? Families such as Vlad and Camilla have found candidates for the son of prophecy. There are only 3 stronger families in the tribe that have not found one, and we are one of them. If the family still can't win the battle for the son of prophecy this time, and no sunrise or glory moon wizard is born, it will be really dangerous." Painter Levy said respectfully, "Soon, it will only take a few weeks. And this time it's the 4th painting, which should be able to touch upon the location of the son of prophecy himself. You have to be careful recently. It's not a big problem to be noticed by the Taoist officials of Daksha, but you must not let the people of the moon worship find out your identity, otherwise you will only become food for them to practice." Gasha, who was pale, warned. Li Wei responded with a yes again, and said carefully, "Lord Gasha, someone shared a piece of information at the party just now, saying that a town of the Kunlun Kyangha lineage will soon return from the subspace in Yangzhou." He was interrupted by Gasha before he finished speaking. "This is none of our business. I emphasize again that our primary task is to find a son of prophecy. What's more, the news released at this level of gathering is mostly deliberately spread by people with ulterior motives, and the purpose is never simple." In an alley in the eastern district of Yumen County, a black cat with blue and yellow eyes jumped and ran quickly, dodged several children who were throwing stones at it, and jumped into the yard next to it. Then, it ran to the backyard with ease, and entered a wing room through a window that was deliberately opened. The next moment, with a wisp of green smoke rising, the black cat disappeared, and was replaced by a woman in her 20s. Her appearance could only be described as average, but her temperament was excellent, and her every move showed the demeanor of a lady from a noble family. But what was a little embarrassing was that this lady from a noble family was not wearing any clothes at this time. If Zhao Chen was here, he would definitely recognize that she was one of the 3 famous people who witnessed the competition for the trade route, the so-called fortune-bringing goddess Gong Fei. The fortune-bringing goddess stretched out her hand and pointed, and an exquisite and elegant long dress that was obviously made by a famous artist appeared in her hand, but she did not put it on immediately. Instead, she lowered her head and thought, after deliberately releasing the news of Yangzhou, "I'm afraid it will cause a lot of trouble. This matter has been blocked by the Huashen sect until now. Once the information is leaked, they will inevitably infer the source of the secret leak. Although it is difficult to lock onto me, the place where I am is likely to be calculated. Well, we can't stay inhuman any longer. It just so happens that the heroine Gong Yun from the 7 Heroes of the South Desert hasn't appeared for a long time, and it's time to make her presence felt, so as not to arouse suspicion. Thinking of this, Gong Fen's originally ordinary face instantly became exquisite, and her temperament also changed from a lady from a noble family to heroic and valiant. This is the appearance of Gong Yun, the 5th hero of the 7 Heroes of the South Desert with the breaking delusion eye. Gong Yun is Gong Fen's sister on the surface, but who would have thought that they are actually the same person? After the change was completed, Gong Yun took out another set of clothes from somewhere and put them on. In addition, the Changjing at the gathering today is Zhao Chen, who competed a few days ago, right? He is the only one whom the eyes bestowed by the Lord, cannot see through. Who is he? I always feel that there is some inexplicable connection between him and the Lord. To the west of Human City, on the official road, several carriages were escorted by dozens of knights and lined up in a long queue out of the city gate. This was Zhao Chen's caravan to Dunhuang, and several carriages were carrying jars of sweet wine. Of course, this wine is no longer called Bingpan now, nor is it the starting funds given to him by his cheap father, but has become purchased by Zhao Chen himself. The escorting knights, in addition to the Golden Art Martial Arts School and the Fire Gun team led by Zhao Zhan, also include people from the Black Cloud Martial Arts School. In return for their last stolen, Zhao Chen allowed them to merge a caravan that had cooperated with the Black Cloud Martial Arts School into their own team and jointly enjoy the tax-free privileges of the trade route. But in return, the Black Cloud Martial Arts School also had to send people to escort. However, not long after leaving the city, a grey-haired old man walked up to the caravan and asked Moqiu, the owner of the Black Cloud Martial Arts School, to take him with him, and he could pay for the fare. Moqiu did not make a decision on his own, but rode directly to a carriage behind and asked through the window, "Mr. Chen, someone wants to join our team." Because they could not ride a horse, Zhao Chen and Qi Meng, who was dressed as a maid, sat in the carriage. It is normal to go out and spend money to join a caravan these days. After all, caravans often hire escorts and martial artists, and their safety is guaranteed, so Zhao Chen was not surprised. He let go of Miss Qi's hand and ended the conversation with her and asked casually, "Who is it?" "It's Tao Zhao, the master of Dunhuang gun casting." When speaking of this name, Moqiu's tone unconsciously carried a hint of respect. Dunhuang gun casting master Tao Zhao, this name is so familiar. By the way, the famous gun Silver Moon that the original owner's stepmother Li Xiaoling gave me for self-defense seems to have been made by this master Tao Zhao. Giving him a ride and making a good relationship should not be a big problem. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen accepted the other party's request and asked Moqiu to put him in another carriage. However, just as Master Tao bowed his hands to express his gratitude and followed Moqiu's disciple Ning Meng to another car, Zhao Chen, who was staring at his back, showed a thoughtful look. "What's wrong?" Qi Meng asked curiously. "This master looks very much like a member named Craftsman in the gathering I attended before. His strength should not be weak, but now he is taking shelter in our team. Either he wants to keep a low profile, or he has caused some trouble. There will be additional updates in the early morning." Chapter 112 Re-entry Mission. Hearing Zhao Chen's words, Qi Meng looked at him strangely for several times, until Zhao Chen felt a little uncomfortable, and then teased, "You have a lot of problems hidden in yourself, and you are wearing the purple ribbon robe that may have a questionable origin. Now there is a master gunsmith with a questionable purpose, who comes to ride with you. I always feel that this trip to Dunhuang will not be too smooth." The purple ribbon robe is an inner lining, and it is no different from ordinary clothes when not activated, so it was worn by Zhao Chen inside. "You haven't even counted yourself who has a questionable identity. Let's not talk about each other," Zhao Chen said unhappily after hearing this. "That's true." Qi Meng nodded in agreement, and then asked, "Aren't you worried?" Zhao Chen knew that she was referring to this abnormal fate traction, so he smiled and shook his head and said, "Is it useful to worry? Now what you say about resistance is empty, the level is too different." It's better to pretend to be submissive first and wait until you have accumulated enough capital. Besides causing some trouble, the people behind the scenes have never forced us too much. Many times, we make the first choice, and then the corresponding fate is involved, isn't it? You are really open-minded. Qi Meng sighed slightly and stopped talking about this topic and said, it's not far from the time when the last serial mission starts. We have to be prepared. Special missions and ordinary missions are separate and will not interfere with each other. With the Sakura Dragon Fairy here, this mission is not closed? Zhao Chen asked in surprise. Qi Meng shook her head and said, the clone is a clone, me. Although some means can be used to bring Zheng Qingyuan into the historical fog, the difficulty of the mission will also increase to a very scary situation, and the gain will not outweigh the loss. Is that so? Can't she also be a helper in the special mission 3 months later? Zhao Chen asked, after thinking about it. After all, the ability to enter the historical fog is Qi Meng's hook, and she obviously knows more. Special missions are different. There are definitely dunks and monks there. Adding Zheng Qingyuan won't increase the difficulty much. Qi Meng shook his head again. Tang Dynasty, beating Protectorate. There is a small town near Lunte City, called Shenjiabao. In the evening of this day, a rather tired team entered the entrance of the small town. The leader of this team looked to be in his 30s. Although he looked a little embarrassed, his temperament and appearance were first class, especially the red mole between his eyebrows, which was unforgettable at first sight. This person was Gu Feng, the hero known as a little cinnabar that makes ghosts see worry. And beside him was Zhang Yunlu, a pretty girl in white with a pure temperament, and many heroes who had received favors from the Zhang family and volunteered to escort Zhang Yunlu to Lunte. Only the old man in black who had been seen in the ruined temple last time disappeared. Zhao Chen and Qi Meng, who entered this world again, also followed the team, as if they had been following each other after the battle in the ruined temple. But the fact is that 3 days have passed since the night of the ruined temple. They have no memory of what Zhao Chen and Qi Meng did in the past 3 days, but they have no doubts. It seems that, based on our performance in the last mission, we have rewoven our roles. Now you are a genuine outer disciple of Xianyang City. Qi Meng whispered to Zhao Chen. Zhao Chen nodded slightly, but he always felt that something was wrong, so he frowned and said, Qi Meng, what do you think of this mission? Qi Meng thought for a moment before speaking carefully. The mission requires us to solve the root cause of the change in Shenjiazhuang. This description is very similar to the original Jing village. I think we have to be prepared for another god to turn into a Daoni. Although she didn't want to think about it, her intuition told her that this was quite likely to happen. When the two were talking, the black sky had already descended, making the earth completely dark. Gu Feng, Zhang Yunlu and others who entered the village were preparing to find an inn to stay in. After all, although cultivators are not afraid of sleeping in the open, it is better to have a roof over their heads than nothing. But at this moment, the expressions of everyone, especially Miss Qi, changed. Because they vaguely heard the chanting of scriptures from the town. And it was not any of the widely circulated safe Buddhist scriptures. Its pronunciation was vague, the sentences were simple, but with a mumbling sound, mixed together, as if countless instruments were playing at will, turning into strange notes. Just listening to it made me feel that my mood became heavier little by little, as if I was pressed by a huge rock, giving people an indescribable sense of weirdness. In addition, there were few pedestrians on the main road of the town, and they all looked dull, like walking corpses. Gu Feng signaled one of his gangsters to come forward and stop a middle-aged man who looked like a farmer, and asked, we want to stay for one night, where is convenient? Zhuangzi, East. Shendashan's house. The farmer said intermittently. Thank you. What was that chanting just now? The man asked again after thanking him, because he had a strange tone. Do you know? 6-time Guanyin? The man's expression suddenly changed, becoming fanatical, and his speech became much faster. Pure light 6-time Guanyin, blooming day and night, spreading her benevolent voice. May all sentient beings in reincarnation suffer, and let them be at peace, and relieve their confusion. This is very wrong. How can Guanyin's followers be so morbidly fanatical? Zhao Chen frowned and looked at Qi Meng beside him. She must know more about Guanyin than he does. Unexpectedly, Qi Meng was a little absent-minded at this time, and murmured, "Is it possible that the clues have first appeared in this era?" Hearing this, Zhao Chen was about to ask a few questions, but Gu Feng, who noticed that something was very wrong with the town, had already ordered, "Everyone, leave the town immediately. We will camp outside tonight and set off all until early tomorrow morning." Seeing this, Zhao Chen, who could not find a suitable reason to refute, had to temporarily follow the team with Miss Qi and leave the town, planning to go into the town alone after nightfall to investigate. But the moment they stepped out of the town, everyone seemed to have forgotten Gu Feng's order and came to the town gate again. Even Qi Meng leaned close to Zhao Chen's ear again and said, "It seems that, based on our performance in the last mission, the roles we played have been rewoven. Now you are a genuine outer disciple of Xianyang City." Everything was the same as before, except that the gangster who was asking the villagers for accommodation had completely disappeared. Chapter 113 Chivalry. Although Qi Meng's voice was as gentle and pleasant as always, Zhao Chen always felt that something was wrong, and his heart was extremely depressed. Seeing that Gu Feng sent another person to stop the farmer and ask him, after getting the name 6-time Guanyin, Zhao Chen's heavy feeling in his heart became more and more serious, almost making him breathless. "What's going on?" Zhao Chen covered his chest, and the 5 immortal spiritual ki unconsciously started to work. In an instant, a certain invisible and unknown breath in the air faded away. Not only were Gu Feng, Zhang Yunlu and others subconsciously attracted to Zhao Chen and cast their eyes on him, but even the enthusiasm on the farmer's face subsided a lot, and he returned to a dull and sluggish state again. "Young Master Zhao, is there anything wrong with this manner?" Gu Feng was knowledgeable after all, and he spoke carefully. "It must be wrong, but I can't say exactly what's wrong." Zhao Chen, who was running his true ki with all his strength, felt better. He didn't answer immediately, but looked at Qi Meng, who seemed to be like Beidou, and could solve people's doubts. The latter was still a little dazed, but soon came to her senses, and organized her sentences, saying, "6-time Guanyin is one of the 33 incarnations of Guanyin Bodhisattva. It sympathizes with the common people and guides people to be good, but it will never make people so fanatical. Either someone is using the name of Bodhisattva to do evil, or they are misinterpreting the Bodhisattva scriptures." At the same time, she secretly transmitted a message to Zhao Chen. In the late ancient times, the faith and incense of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were polluted, causing them to fall into demons one after another, and become Tao evil. I originally thought that this was caused by some kind of accident at the end of the ancient Tang dynasty. But this historical fog is in the era when Taichu Daojun preached not long ago, and many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have not yet achieved enlightenment in a pseudonym. There are actually demons polluting the faith. This is the root of the disaster from the source. No wonder at the end of the ancient times, Buddhism collapsed overnight. Polluting faith. What is enlightenment in a pseudonym? Zhao Chen was puzzled, and said to Gu Feng, the leader, "There may be unknown dangers here. I wonder what rules Master Gu has." Qi Meng, who sensed Zhao Chen's thoughts, continued to transmit his voice in secret. The names of Bodhisattvas and Buddhas were already widely spread in the world before the Jiaoshan heavenly change in the second year of Tangguang, and there were many believers. In order to attract incense, many ancient Buddhist monks directly used the names of Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, accepted beliefs, refined the false into the true, and achieved self-realization. The last time I met Jin Chanzi in the Stone Buddha Temple, it was such a situation. But now it seems that it may have caused the bad consequences later. Guanyin, is it the same? Zhao Chen asked in his heart. Yes. But Guanyin Bodhisattva is the real Supreme Dao Lord. In the end, he took the incarnations that turned into Dao evil and disappeared without a trace, so the great compassionate Guanzi Heart Sutra that I practiced was relatively safe. Miss Qi paused here and then said solemnly, "Perhaps the purpose of this task is to let us solve the pollution buried in the faith in history and reduce the future burden of the Bodhisattva?" It makes sense. The picture of the Bodhisattva is Miss Qi's hanging, which frequently brings her into the mist of history. Obviously, it is not just for charity, it must have its purpose. While Zhao Chen was thinking about it, Gu Feng also said after serious consideration, I intend to withdraw from this evil manor first and camp nearby for one night. What do you think, young hero? Zhao Chen still vividly remembered the way he killed Liang Sheng, the Qiyang divine sword, at the Star God Temple at night. He could be said to be the force of the entire team, so Gu Feng naturally had to consider his opinion. After hearing what the other party said, Zhao Chen thought about it for a while, and wanted to agree. After all, this was a mature and prudent statement. Even if he needed to solve the root of the problem in this place, he could sneak back later. But before he could finish his words, the feeling of depression in his heart came again. It seemed that, if he really chose this, he would fall into an even more disadvantageous situation. Zhao Chen was startled for a moment. He suspected that this was the Dairi Xingcha warning him, so he did not respond to Gu Feng immediately, but quickly entered into a state of meditation, and entered the Dairi Xingcha. As soon as he sat on the chair formed by 6 golden dragons, Zhao Chen saw the demon sealing vermilion pen fly up by itself, and write the word ZHU in the air. Then, Zhao Chen was horrified to find that a layer of black mist like a human shape had arisen in his soul. Inside the black fog were faces that were twisted and painful, extremely evil. Zhao Chen just took a look and felt a splitting headache. At the same time, the memories of what happened in Shenjiabao reappeared in his mind. It turns out that Miss Qi, Gu Feng and others, and I have explored this town several times, but every time we exit here, everything will restart, including the memory. It turns out that including the old man in the refining key realm, 4 people in the team have died in the previous exploration. Once they die, they will completely become a part of this strange town, and can no longer get rid of it. It turns out that Shenjiabao has long been transformed into a strange domain. The process of our continuous restarting is also a process of being constantly polluted by it. No wonder I feel more and more depressed. Are those faces in the black fog the incense beliefs? Looking at the black fog that was destroyed by the demon sealing vermilion pen with a single word, Zhao Chen was still frightened and thought about countermeasures. The easiest way to deal with the strange domain is to summon Wang Dao, i.e., use his magical power to destroy the rules and then get out of it, just like when rescuing Yan Hongxia before. But in that case, the mission will fail 80% of the time. After all, once you get out of it like this, it will be difficult to get back in, not to mention solving its root cause. So, we have to crack it according to its rules? Well, this strange domain seems to be a story type. On the surface, there are no other rules except restarting. Maybe you need to participate in the plot and solve the puzzle? According to what the farmer said, combined with the previous explorations, the key is likely to be in Mr. Shen's house. Well, you can ask Gu Feng to leave a few people at the entrance of the town. Once the exploration is not going well, send a signal to immediately trigger the restart. Anyway, the big sun star raft can wash away the pollution, so it doesn't matter if we come a few more times. As for Miss Qi, she probably has a way to deal with it. After some calculations, Zhao Chen, who had a bottom line in his heart, opened the jade book and exchanged for Yan Hongxia's blood. Using this as a medium, he used the purple light ring to borrow the power of the Hongxia sword. The next moment, Zhao Chen in reality was surrounded by red energy surging. He drew out the sunset sword and pointed it in the direction of the town and said passionately, how can we sit idly by when we realize that there are evil spirits at work here? Today's matter of slaying demons and defending the way is not to be avoided because of misfortune or fortune. How can you trick others into taking risks with you without a sense of righteousness? Chapter 114, Strange Events. It has to be said that the picture of a handsome young man holding a sword, full of vigor, and making an impassioned speech is already very appealing. Coupled with the agitation of the 5 immortal spiritual keys showing the Red Emperor effect of Zhao Chen, he is even more majestic, domineering and charming. Just look at the red face of Zhang Yunlu, a little girl who has a good impression of Zhao Chen, and you can see it. Gu Feng and others are also chivalrous, otherwise they would not have opposed the beating protectorate and escorted the daughter of their benefactor to Lunte for thousands of miles. So after hearing what Zhao Chen said, they felt a little ashamed, and a heroic spirit suddenly arose in their hearts. As Master Chen said, Today's matter of slaying demons and defending the way is not to be avoided because of misfortune or fortune. As cultivators of our generation, we should be chivalrous and slay demons. As for Qifeng, she was already covering her mouth and laughing secretly, and the little bit of worry that had accumulated in her heart disappeared. The three realms are happy, bowing to the heavenly master. It is worthy of being the spiritual energy among the five immortals, born noble. Zhao Chen saw that the heat was almost stirred, so he stopped while he was ahead and said, but chivalrous people should also do what they can. It is better to let those with weaker cultivation stay at the gate of the town and withdraw immediately if things go wrong. Yes, it is easier for us cultivators who have cultivated true ki to fight or leave. Gufeng nodded, approved Zhao Chen's proposal, and began to make arrangements. Although he was disturbed by Zhao Chen's true ki and felt a little touched, he would never ignore the danger. The reason why he accepted the other party's proposal was that he suddenly realized that if there were really demons in the town, even if he camped outside the town, he might not be able to escape. It is better to take the initiative to attack and find out the situation. Finally, Gufeng selected 3 good players with unique skills, plus Zhao Chen and Qifeng to go with him. But before they set off, the little girl Zhang Yunlu came over and said firmly that she wanted to go with them. After thinking about it, Gufeng felt that it would be more reassuring to bring Zhang Yunlu with him, so he agreed. On the other side, Zhao Chen also told Miss Qi what he had discovered by letting her read her mind. Strange domain, and we have been restarted several times? Qifeng frowned and said in confusion, I didn't notice it, and I'm sure that my soul is not polluted. At this point, she seemed to think of something and suddenly fell silent. Zhao Chen also sighed slightly and changed the subject. What do you think is the core of this weird? Weird is the most difficult evil to defend against in this world. Its power seems to be able to combine with anything at any place. Whether it is a living thing or a dead thing, it may become the core of the advent of weird. Only by destroying the core can the strange domain disappear and solve the root cause of the problem in Shenjiabao. It's probably something related to 6-hour guanyin. Otherwise, the farmer wouldn't have become like that after he mentioned 6-hour guanyin. Qifeng said, after adjusting her mood. Hearing this, Zhao Chen nodded slightly and then saw that Gufeng was ready, so he led the way and led everyone to the only large house in the town. He was wearing a purple ribbon robe inside, which could resist most attacks below the level of magical powers, and it was perfect for him to take the damage in front. Just as they walked to the street near the house, they suddenly heard footsteps. A man with a well-dressed appearance and bulging temples, who must be a martial arts expert, walked up quickly, clasped his fists and saluted, and asked, are you all cultivators who have achieved true ki? Gufeng and Zhao Chen looked at each other, and then Gufeng, who looked more reliable, answered, I'm Gufeng. I just happened to pass by here, and was looking for a place to stay. So it's a little cinema ghost in person. My apologies. The man showed a look of surprise when he heard it, and then said, my master has been troubled by some things that are inconvenient to say openly recently, and he is looking for a night to solve them. If Mr. Gu is willing to stay with us, my family will cover all the expenses. Oh. In that case, thank you very much. Although the other party looked very impatient and even suspected of being desperate, Zhao Chen and Qifeng curled their lips at the same time, and then, under the guidance of the man, they walked towards the gate of the house. On the way, Gufeng carefully asked questions and learned that the man's name was Chen He. He seemed to have been in the martial arts world, and his knowledge and conversation were extraordinary. It was unknown why he condescended to become a servant of a local rich man. After walking for a while, they saw a large and magnificent mansion. The red brick and green tile horsehead wall, the bricks and tiles were mottled, and there was a hint of ancient charm. It didn't look like something that a country rich man could afford to build. Not to mention the financial resources. There was no connection to invite a master craftsman to design such a house. Can you confirm it? Zhao Chen asked in his heart. Qifeng nodded and said in secret, the state is similar to the souls sucked into my bodhisattva picture. Then your bodhisattva and we seem to have some unspeakable secrets. Zhao Chen just complained in his heart and saw Qi Meng rolled his eyes. The two of them exchanged their eyes, which made Zhang Yunlu, who was following behind, feel uncomfortable, but she didn't even understand why. Several people followed Chenny into the gate, and then a scent of sandalwood hit them, making them feel peaceful. Indistinctly, the sound of chanting sutras came to their ears. Fortunately, the sutras were just the contents of the ordinary Lotus Sutra, and there was nothing evil about them. My master and my daughter are both devout Buddhists, and they worship the 6th time of Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. They chant sutras and pray to the Buddha every day. Please wait for a moment. Chenny welcomed the group to a side hall to wait, and then he went out, after confessing his crime. Not long after, a beautiful maid brought tea and snacks. These maids were all good looking, and they were similar to Zhang Yunlu, only slightly worse than Qi Meng and Zheng Qinggan. However, Zhang Yunlu's eyes were filled with surprise, because she recognized the identity of one of the maids. That seems to be Sister Ayan. Wasn't she kidnapped by the son of the Protector General? How did she appear here? Besides, she doesn't seem to know me at all. Zhang Yunlu whispered. After hearing her words, Gu Feng also nodded and added, the servant Chen He, if I'm not mistaken, should be the famous Thunder Sword Chen Pingxi in beating Jiang Hu. His strength is not inferior to Liang Sheng, and even better. The letter found from Chuang Divine Sword Liang Sheng mentioned that he would be waiting for us on the road ahead. He never thought that it would be such a wait. There is another chapter in the early morning. Chapter 115. Let me try. Speaking of the letter on Liang Sheng, the Qiyang sword, Zhao Chen saw it only after entering this historical era for the second time. After all, when he left last time, he only had time to grab the man's secret book and sword. The content of the letter was nothing more than telling Gu Feng and others that Chen Pingxi, the Thunder Sword, knew that Liang Sheng would fail, so he was waiting for them on the road behind. But in Zhao Chen's view, this was just a trick, nothing more than disturbing the minds of himself and others. After all, if Liang Sheng won, the letter would not fall into his hands at all. It has to be said that these ancient warriors like to play this kind of mind-affecting method very much, while the refining monks of Daksha are all pursuing the range and power of fire guns. However, what no one expected was that now this so-called Thunder Sword has become a servant of the local rich man's family, waiting for us in an alternative way. It seems that a fierce battle is inevitable. Zhao Chen sighed secretly, but did not immediately expose the trick of this strange domain. Instead, he watched the cutscene with interest, as if he was playing a role-playing game. He glanced around, and found that in addition to their group, there were 3 martial arts masters who looked quite powerful drinking tea and waiting in this side hall. One of them was a woman in her 20s, with a melon seed face, willow-shaped eyebrows, and a bit of coolness. She was wearing a plain white cotton jacket and cloak, and a long sword with a green scabbard on her back. Opposite the woman, sat an old woman. Her hair was still black, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes were layered and crisscrossed like gullies. In addition to the two of them, there was a middle-aged man with a square face, dressed like a Taoist priest, holding a whisk in his hand. I don't recognize those 2 women. They may not be from the beating martial arts world, but the middle-aged Taoist priest is the master of the 3 ancient ghosts killed by Yuan Miski, the Taoist Fang, who is known as the Old Demon of Yinshan. But he is a little strange now, just like the Thunder Sword. He seems not to recognize me. In order to prevent others from hearing, Gu Feng also used the method of sound transmission to tell Zhao Chen and others. Sound transmission is not a very advanced skill. As long as the cultivator has a certain degree of control over the true energy, it can be used without opening the orifice. It's just that after opening the orifice, it is more convenient to use sound transmission, and it is more safe, and it is difficult to be eavesdropped. I'm afraid their cognition has been covered. Zhao Chen glanced at the unbelievably beautiful maids again, and became more certain of some of his guesses. At this time, a large group of people came out from the backyard, led by an old man with a haggard face. He held a mani pearl in his left hand and a 6-character Dairi box in his right hand. He was followed by several maids and servants, and the Thunder Sword was guarding on the side. This was obviously the owner of this place, Mr. Shen. Zhao Chen and others were about to greet him when they saw the old man bow to the ground and pleaded sadly, "Please save my daughter's life." Seeing his great courtesy, everyone stood up and asked, "I wonder what happened to Mr. Shen's family? Alas, our family is unfortunate and has provoked a demon." Mr. Shen covered his face. Although it was a little difficult to speak, he still said with a stiff face, "I'm nearly 70 years old, but I have only one unmarried daughter. I want to find a live-in son-in-law so that he can protect my daughter after I die. But I couldn't find the right one after choosing, until a young man stayed at my house and fell in love with my daughter. The young man pretended to be a gentleman at first, but after drinking once, his true colors were revealed. He was actually a jackal with a beast in human form. When he saw that his plan had failed, he directly blocked off a side yard of my house and forcibly occupied my daughter. Poor old man. I couldn't open the door of that yard no matter what, and could only watch my daughter being bullied every day from the attic of the nearby yard." As he said this, he led several knights present to the door of a closed small courtyard and sighed, "This is it. No matter how you smash the door, climb the wall, or even dig a tunnel, you can't get in. I really have no choice but to ask the knights passing by to help." The young woman in a plain white cotton jacket and cloak heard this and raised her eyebrows. She could no longer suppress her anger and shouted angrily, "The evildoer is so arrogant. I, Ding Hongmei, will definitely kill this monster and save your daughter." As she said this, she pinched the sword formula, and the sword behind her came out of the sheath by itself and slashed towards the door of the courtyard. But the embarrassing thing was that the expected scene of the wooden door being shattered by a sword did not happen. Instead, her sword was bounced back and went straight to Zhang Yunlu, but was stopped by Zhao Chen. Zhao Chen looked at the sword in his hand and then looked at the inexplicable power on the gate with a strange expression, muttering, "Could this be the script of Gao Lao's Huang?" On the other side, the female knight named Ding Hongmei looked at Zhao Chen looking at her sword. It was not right to recall it, nor was it right not to recall it. She just felt hot on her face and said with a stiff upper lip, "Young knight, can you return the moon-grabbing sword to me?" Then, she looked at Zhang Yunlu again and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I almost hurt you." Zhang Yunlu didn't come back to her senses until then. She waved her hand to indicate that it was okay and looked at Zhao Chen gratefully. "The other party saved me again, and I don't know how to repay him. What a pity." Thinking of this, Zhang Yunlu's eyes stopped at the hands of Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng and pursed her lips. Although Zhao Chen noticed Zhang Yunlu's mood changes, he didn't have the heart to analyze what the little girl was thinking at the moment. He returned the moon-grabbing sword to the girl, named Ding Hongmei, and said meaningfully, "We all have the ambition to fly and reach the sky, to embrace the bright moon. The girl has a good ambition." "Thank you." Ding Hongmei replied expressionlessly, then looked at Gufeng, the old woman, and Fang Doran and asked, "Do you have any way to break the restriction in this yard?" At the same time, the kind-hearted Shen also cast an expectant look. However, although the supernatural power contained in the cinnabar between Gufeng's eyebrows was invincible against ghosts, it had no achievements in breaking the restriction, so naturally there was no way. After trying methods such as black dog blood and boy urine to no avail, the old woman and Fang Doran were also helpless. After all, this was a period not long after Taichu preached, and the warriors in the rivers and lakes still had a superficial understanding of magic and restrictions. When the expression on Mr. Shen's face became more and more desperate, and Ding Hongmei's eyes also showed disappointment, Zhao Chen coughed and took the initiative to stand up. In the eyes of everyone who was confused, surprised, or disdainful, he smiled and said, "Why don't you let me try?" Update progress, 3/45. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Tacit Understanding. Facing Zhao Chen's initiative, the expressions of the people present were different. Gufeng, Zhang Yunlu and others who had seen his martial arts skills naturally trusted him very much. Shen Shanren and Ding Hongmei were a little hesitant, not daring to believe that a teenager of such age could really solve a problem that even famous knights had no idea about. Thunder Sword Chen Pingxi and Yunshan old monster Fang Doran looked disdainful, thinking that the young man was just showing off. Only the old woman looked at Zhao Chen carefully, and her cloudy eyes gradually lit up, as if she had found some treasure. Zhao Chen didn't care what others thought. After getting Shen Shanren's approval, he walked to the door of the courtyard and pulled out the sunset sword from Liang Sheng, the Chuang divine sword. With a clang, the sword was unsheathed, and a long sword like the color of the sunset appeared in his hand. Zhao Chen deliberately showed the sunset sword, and found that Chen Pingxi and Fang Doran look normal, as if they didn't recognize the sword at all. Sure enough, he nodded secretly, and then he circulated the Red Emperor Yang Yuan key borrowed from Yan Hongxia, condensed it on the tip of the sword, and stabbed it directly at the node of the magic circle that blocked the courtyard. Since the last incident in the Stone Buddha temple, when he found that he had the ability to see through the false and see the truth, Zhao Chen guessed that this might be the ability of the next escort that Xingcha gave him to experience in advance after finding the purple light ring. Just like the shielding of fear and eloquence before becoming a traveling merchant. After these days of familiarity testing, Zhao Chen found that this ability has a good effect in detecting invisibility, breaking restrictions, and seeing through illusions. Speaking of which, this ability is very similar to the breaking delusion eye of Gong Yun, the 5th hero in the 7 heroes of the South Desert, who is on the list of outstanding people, except that the latter can see through a higher limit of things. Back to the point, as the vitality of the forbidden nodes on the wooden door was swallowed by the Red Emperor Yang Yuan key, the seal that made a group of martial arts masters helpless was easily broken by Zhao Chen. With a bang, the door opened, and a cold wind blew in. It was so cold that it made people shiver unconsciously. How could it be possible? Fang Doran's face suddenly became ugly. After all, the restriction that he couldn't break was easily solved by a young boy, which made him lose face. But the facts were right in front of him, and he had to believe it, so he could only turn his head away and pretend not to see it. Although Ding Hongmei was also a little surprised, she was more happy. After all, only when the restriction was opened could there be hope to rescue the poor Miss Shen. The little girl Zhang Yunlu looked proud, as if she was the one who opened the restriction. Only Gu Feng's eyes became solemn when he looked into the yard, and the cinnabar mole between his eyebrows became red again. The Dark Land. If this place continues like this, it will become a paradise for ghosts in a few years. A hoarse voice was heard, and the old woman came closer with a dragon-headed cane. She looked at Zhao Chen and said with a sigh, "It is indeed the Red Emperor Yang Yuan. Young master is a disciple of Xianyang City?" "Exactly," Zhao Chen replied vaguely. With the spiritual key of the 5 immortals that he had obtained the true meaning of Teichu, it would not be a big problem for him to say that he was a disciple of Xianyang City. "May I know who you are, senior?" "My name is Muang. I once listened to the teachings of the Kunlun Kyang Hill lineage. Unfortunately, my aptitude was not good, and I could not stay in the Immortal Gate." The old woman sighed slightly. "The young master's true key is mysterious. He must have obtained the true teachings, but this place is dangerous. You must not underestimate it." There was a hint of persuasion in her words, as if she didn't want him to go in. "Thank you for your advice, senior." Zhao Chen bowed solemnly, but after glancing at the female knight named Ding Hongmei, he still walked into the yard without hesitation, leaving only one sentence. "Today, I'm holding a sword for justice. How can I change my heart because of the dangers?" His heroic performance made all the martial arts masters stunned. Only Qi Fimeng laughed lightly and followed his footsteps. Zhang Yunlu came back to his senses at this and hurriedly pulled Gu Feng. Gu Feng recalled the heroic attitude of Master Chen in the Star Temple. Now he heard the words, "Where there is justice, there is no fear of danger," and his heart was already very excited. "Even though I'm old, my blood is not cold yet." As his thoughts turned, he also took Zhang Yunlu and the rest of his men into the yard together. Ding Hongmei and the old woman didn't know what they were feeling at this time. Their faces were extremely strange, but in the end they followed with their weapons. As for the lightning sword and the old demon of Yunshan, they watched this scene with a sneer, without any movement, just waiting outside the door. On the other side, as soon as Zhao Chen entered the yard, he found that dark clouds completely covered the afterglow of the setting sun, as if he had entered a deep night without moonlight. He relied on his external spiritual sense to move forward. The rockery and water in the yard were like quietly lurking monsters, baring their fangs and claws, which made people palpitate. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from each of the two rockery on the left and right, holding a long and strange weapon in his hand, and attacked Zhao Chen from top to bottom. Be careful. Gu Feng, who came over from behind, just reminded him, and saw the sunset sword in Zhao Chen's hand piercing out like a sunset glow piercing through the clouds. This sword is gorgeous and dazzling, but there is nothing fancy. With the water moon illusion body, the main feature is the word fast. Almost instantly, the man on the left, who was dressed in black, and had disheveled hair, and looked like a ghost, covered his throat, that was gushing blood, and uttered a few ho-ho sounds, and was obviously dying. His eyes were wide open, and he could not believe until his death, that his opponent completely ignored the attack from the other side and just wanted to kill him. What kind of hatred do we have that can make you use a life-for-life fighting method? Unfortunately, before he could figure it out, the strange long stick in his hand fell to the ground, and he himself lost his voice. But at this time, the man in the white robe on the other side had already killed him, and he swung the morning stick in his hand down, with a strong wind and great power. And with Zhao Chen's current sword power, it was difficult to turn around and resist. But he didn't plan to block it at all. After all, he was wearing the protective magic weapon purple ribbon robe inside. Could he be afraid of this kind of attack at the level of enlightenment? What's more, when Zhao Chen was thinking in his heart, he heard a bang gunshot, and then the head of the man in the white robe was torn into pieces, and the body fell to the ground. The gunfighting technique from tens of thousands of years later reappeared in this era. And it was not until this time that Gu Feng's subsequent words came over. They are the scums of the rivers and lakes recruited by the general of the capital, the brothers Stick Impermanence, who like to join forces to fight the enemy. Just halfway through the words, two bodies fell to the ground, and he could only stop abruptly and praised, Mr. Chen and Miss Femeng are really in tune with each other and cooperate well. He didn't notice that Zhang Yunlu next to him pouted again unconsciously. At this time, Qi Femeng was reminding him in a voice transmission, Erlang, don't rely on the magic weapon to protect yourself, and develop the habit of ignoring other people's attacks. Zheng Qingyan, who has the first grade magical power evil dragon immortal body, died because of this habit. You must learn a lesson. Chapter 117 Ding Hangmei. A good swimmer drowns in water. This thought suddenly came to Zhao Chen's mind. He reflected on his previous behavior and found that he was indeed a bit wasteful. Top-notch defensive magic tools like the purple ribbon robe should be kept as a trump card to catch the enemy by surprise and should not be used easily unless it is absolutely necessary. Zheng Qingyan made the immortal body known to everyone, and in the end he was deliberately targeted. Zhao Chen has only been practicing for a short time and lacks experience in many things. At this time, the importance of a good teacher and helpful friend who can point out his mistakes is reflected. Now the good teacher is gone for the time being, and only the helpful friend is left. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen saw Gu Feng, Zhang Yunlu, and even Ding Hangmei and others followed him, so he did not delay, and continued to move forward. Soon, in front of the bedroom, a fat monk suddenly appeared and blocked the way. He was holding a thick and heavy watermill Zen staff in his hand. Seeing him, Gu Feng immediately reminded him, this is the Zen Master Mo Yun of the Protectorate. He is a master who has opened the 9 orifices. He is invulnerable to swords and guns with his perfect golden bell cover. Before he finished speaking, the fat monk waved his Zen stick, and the sound of the wind was heavy, and rushed towards him. Seeing this, Zhao Chen lowered his long sword in his right hand, raised a revolver seized from the bear in his left hand, and pulled the trigger directly. Master Mo Yun listened to the sound and dodged, but at this moment, he suddenly felt the extreme danger. But when his eyes caught the source of the danger, a bullet had already shot into his brow. It turned out that the reason why Zhao Chen fired was purely to cover up the sound of the silver moon in Miss Qi's hand. After all, he had not learned the gunfighting technique and the possibility of successfully killing the opponent was very small, so he only made a feint attack. Zhao Chen and Qi Femeng practiced this set of tactics many times on weekdays, so they were so tacit. With a thud, the fat monk's watermill Zen stick fell to the ground, and he himself slowly fell down with a look of disbelief on his face. The golden bell cover was completely invulnerable to swords and guns, but it could not withstand the close-range shooting of bullets. What's more, the Silver Moon was originally a famous gun that could be blessed by true energy, and its power was much greater than that of ordinary revolvers. Gu Feng and Zhang Yunlu, who had already seen the power of the hidden weapons in Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng's hands, were not very surprised, but Ding Hongmei and the old woman were shocked, looking at the exquisite factory-shaped object with surprise in their eyes. Why are there so many people from the Protectorate ambushing in the yard where Miss Shen is imprisoned? At this time, Gu Feng walked forward and frowned and asked, I think it's because the demon that Shen Shan mentioned is the general son of the Protectorate. Zhao Chen simply replied, his voice like a sigh and regret. Then, he directly pushed open the door of the bedroom. In the middle of the hall, on a cushion, a young man was sitting cross-legged in meditation. He held a rosary in one hand and a sutra box in the other. His appearance was exactly the same as that of the great man Shen. At first glance, he seemed to be compassionate and merciful, but in Zhao Chen's eyes, the malice emanating from his body was not concealed at all. However, others did not think so. Whether it was Gu Feng, Zhang Yunlu, Ding Hongmei, or the old woman, they all knelt on the ground with a pious look on their faces, ready to perform the great ceremony of prostrating themselves. But at this moment, Qi Fimeng suddenly formed a seal with both hands, and chanted in her mouth, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deep prajna parameter, sees that the 5 aggregates are empty, and overcomes all suffering. Her voice was not loud, but it sounded like a thunder in everyone's ears, making Gu Feng, Zhang Yunlu and others sober up instantly. When they looked at the young man again, they saw the hostility and malice on his face, just like Zhao Chen. Ashina Shali. He is the Protector General Ashina Shali. But how can he be so evil? Gu Feng tightly grasped the sword in his hand, his voice trembling a little, and he vaguely guessed something. Is this Ashina Shali? The man who wants to force me to marry him? Humph, he looks much worse than Master Chen. Zhang Yunlu didn't have too many thoughts, and only felt disgust in her heart. Chuckle. After seeing him, Ding Hongmei's teeth were trembling involuntarily, but she still shouted fiercely, I will kill the demons today. After saying that, the sword behind her rose into the air again, and chopped straight at the evil master. But although this female knight mastered the sword control technique, she seemed to have not even learned the basic swordsmanship. The next moment, she saw her sword breaking section by section, and finally only a bare hilt was left. Seeing this, the old woman sighed, then raised the dragon head cane, and moved forward a little, stimulating the sword energy hidden in it. The sword energy instantly turned into dozens of sword lights that fell from the sky, directly hitting the young master of the Protectorate General who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. In an instant, the sword light submerged the strange young master. Its power not only collapsed the entire bedroom, but also created a 2 or 3 meter deep pit on the ground. This is the Yang Gang magic of the Kunlun Kaianghua school. Transformation is like a sword. Although the old woman was not a person with gangsha or magic power, she was given this sword energy to protect herself by her master. It was eliminated just like that. Before Ding Hongmei, Zhang Yunlu and others had time to rejoice, there was a flower in front of their eyes, and then the bedroom and the ground were restored to their original state, and the young master Ashina sat cross-legged again, looking at everyone coldly. Then, he unfolded the sutra box in his hand, and dozens of figures appeared in the courtyard. Among them were the servants of the Shen family, the great philanthropist Chen Pingxi, the lightning sword, Fang Doran, the old demon of Yinshan, and even the stick impermanence brothers that Zhao Chen had just killed, as well as the fat monk. They surrounded the group and stared at them maliciously. What's going on? The little girl Zhang Yunlu stared at this scene in amazement, feeling that the scene in front of her was in sharp conflict with her past cognition of life. Strange domain. We are trapped in the strange domain. We must find the carrier of the core. Gu Feng was knowledgeable and finally reacted at this time. Or, he finally verified his guess. He subconsciously looked at Zhao Chen, but found that the famous disciple did not have any nervousness on his face, and also looked at the female hero Ding Hongmei who was carrying an empty scabbard. Gu Feng also followed his gaze, and was shocked to see that the female hero was squatting on the ground with her hands on her head, muttering, I can't win. I can't win at all. Everything is fake. I can't be redeemed. Zhao Chen's eyes showed pity, but then turned cold. He walked a few steps to Ding Hongmei, his true energy surging, and lifted her chin. Female hero Ding Hongmei, or I should call you Miss Shen. Do you really think you can't win, or do you not want to win at all? There will be a supplement in the early morning. Chapter 118 Reason. Hearing what Zhao Chen said, Gu Feng immediately took a step back with Zhang Yunlu, and his eyes towards Ding Hongmei also became uncertain. Ding Hongmei, with her chin raised, stared at Zhao Chen. Her pretty face began to become distorted, and she screamed, "What are you talking about? How can I not want to win? Because if you really want to win, then Senior Muang's Kyang sword light just now is enough to kill him, isn't it?" Zhao Chen stared into Ding Hongmei's eyes and said word by word, "You don't want to admit that you can be saved. It's not like that. It's not like that. I want to be saved. This is the meaning of my existence." Ding Hongmei shook her head vigorously, but she didn't dare to meet Zhao Chen's eyes. Zhao Chen narrowed his eyes and nodded. Yes, the identity of Ding Hongmei can appear, which is naturally the proof of your inner desire for salvation. I guess this name comes from a female knight you have seen before. You have always admired her in your heart, so you hope to become the other party and come to save yourself, right? Hearing this, Zhao Chen no longer needed to pinch Ding Hongmei's chin. She suddenly raised her head with a bloodshot look in her eyes. How did you know? This is actually very easy to guess. Sword controlling is a spell that can only be mastered by people with superb swordsmanship, but the Ding Hongmei you played knows almost nothing about swordsmanship and has not even practiced the basics. It is obvious that this effect was forcibly simulated by some means. In your heart, sword controlling technique is probably the most powerful spell, right? Zhao Chen smiled and continued, and after you encountered such a terrible thing, you felt that only Ding Hongmei, who mastered the sword controlling technique, could save you. After hearing the words encountered such a terrible thing, Ding Hongmei, or Miss Shen's eyes became more bloodshot, and she asked in a hoarse voice, "What else do you know?" "I know a lot." Zhao Chen let go of her chin, stood up and pointed at the evil young man in the bedroom and said, "For example, Ashina Shali, the son of the general of the protectorate, brought his men to this manor and lived directly in your house. Your father, either to please him or out of helplessness, presented you to that young man. You were beaten and tortured by that young master and his men, and were eventually tortured to death. And you were originally a believer of 6-time Guanyin, but before you died you hated the Bodhisattva for not saving you when you needed help the most. This resentment attracted the weirdness, which descended upon an item related to 6-time Guanyin. Well, that might be something you carry with you, so it indirectly brought you the power of revenge. So the entire Shenji Abao was transformed into a strange domain, and ordinary people became tools to pollute the Bodhisattva faith, while Ashina Shali, Monk Moyan, and Watching brothers who directly harmed you all became your puppets, and will never be reborn in this dark courtyard created by your mind. And Chen Pingzi, the lightning sword, and Fang Doran, the old demon of Yinshan, are both famous masters. Although they are under the command of the protectorate, they do not bother to bully a village girl, so they are just accomplices in your eyes. That's why they, together with your father, Mr. Shen, and the many concubines brought by Ashina Shali, have been rewoven with memories and transformed into the masters, servants, maids, knights invited to help, and other roles in this mansion. Yes, by the way, it is a big flaw that a country rich man has so many maids with extraordinary looks and such a luxurious house. Isn't this house the appearance of a villa of the Protector General? Is it a blueprint obtained from the mind of the Protector General's son? Having said that, Zhao Chen paused, then squatted in front of Ding Hongmei again, and said, "And the reason why you designed a drama in this weird domain, to invite knights to save you, is nothing more than being unwilling and wanting to see the ending, where you were successfully rescued." So Ding Hongmei appeared, but just when Ding Hongmei was about to rescue you, you regretted it again, because you began to envy yourself for being saved, so you began to forbid yourself to win. And in order to prove that you really can't win, and that you can't be saved, you dragged the knights who strayed here into this game one after another, and asked them to save you, but at the last minute you forcibly resurrected all the villains who bullied you, causing everyone to fail. I think this is probably not the first time that Senior Muang has used Kyung-Hua sword energy to kill Ashina Shally, but she was obviously tricked by you. However, you are quite tolerant towards those who have not harmed you. It seems that you have not completely erased her cognition and memory, and she is not controlled so tightly. So Senior Muang only obscurely prevented me from entering this small courtyard after realizing that I'm a disciple of Xianyang City. She hopes that I can use special means to contact the masters of the sect to come here to solve this strange domain. As he said, Zhao Chen glanced at Muang, who was dressed as an old woman, but the latter only sighed slightly and said nothing. No, it's not what you said. I really can't win. You are talking nonsense. Ding Hongmui suddenly became excited, and the next moment, Thunder Sword Chen Pingxi and Yunshan Old Monster Fang Doran attacked Zhao Chen at the same time. Be careful. Seeing this, Gu Feng flew over to stop Fang Doran, and reminded him at a very fast speed. Chen Pingxi's Thunder Light 3 slashes is a rare fast sword in beating. Before he finished speaking, Chen Pingxi's long sword with the sound of wind and thunder had already attacked Zhao Chen's chest, but the latter immediately rose from a purple light and easily blocked the sword. Zhao Chen also took advantage of the moment when the opponent's long sword was blocked, put the revolver against the forehead of the Thunderlight sword, and pulled the trigger. With a bang, the head and body of the Thunderlight sword Chen Pingxi were swallowed by a gorgeous red cloud, and nothing was left. This was the red cloud bullet that Zhao Chen asked Sister Hangsha for the night before, which contained the power of the Red Emperor Yang Yuan sword key. Thunderlight sword? Then my move should be called Thunder Sound sword. Zhao Chen blew away the gunpowder from the muzzle and said with a smile. However, he ignored Taoist Fang, but looked at Ding Hongmui again and asked directly, do you still think you can't win? Ding Hongmui's eyes were red, and she shook her head desperately like crazy, shouting, we can't win. We can't win. We all have lofty aspirations, and want to fly to the sky to embrace the bright moon. Have you forgotten that you named your sword Moon Grabbing Sword? Since you have the ambition to embrace the moon in the sky, why don't you dare to face your true thoughts? Zhao Chen looked at Ding Hongmui, who seemed to have completely lost her mind with some disappointment, and sighed secretly. Although this girl seems to still retain some humanity, she has actually been deeply polluted by weirdness, and it is difficult for her to make decisions independently. In this case, Zhao Chen looked into the bedroom, and the son of the general of the protectorate, who was the incarnation of Miss Shenzhen, a demon, pointed his sword and said, I'll win in front of you. After saying this, Zhao Chen concentrated on logging into the Dairi crossing chariot and exchanged for his strongest substitute, Wang Daoye. To deal with the strange domain, he naturally had to rely on the magical cultivators. Update progress, 4/45. Chapter 119 Inside Story. The burning wheel clears the clouds and soars into the strange domain, and the divine wind turns into a sword to cut off the source of evil. With a fierce whistling sound, the divine wind on the sea reappeared in the world, and in an instant, the evil young man Ashina Shally was torn into pieces. Then, the divine wind continued to move forward, sweeping directly through the surrounding puppets in the strange domain such as Yunshan Old Monster and Stick Impermanence, and swept away the dark clouds covering the yard. The next moment, a ray of orange from the setting sun poured into the yard and shone on a weak girl with tears on her face. She had disheveled hair and was in a mess. She kept muttering impossible, don't look at me in her mouth, trying to restore everything around her to the way it was just now. This was Miss Shen, who had changed from Ding Hongmui back to her original appearance. But this time, Ashina Shally and others did not appear again. Or rather, it would not be so fast to reappear. The power of divine power has already involved the superficial laws of heaven and earth. Although Wang Daoye cannot completely destroy the strange domain, he can also cause certain damage to the rules in this newly formed strange domain. It takes a long time to recover from this damage, which is also the main reason why the divine power cultivators are not afraid of ordinary strange domains and can break out of them. At this time, Gu Feng and others were also shocked by the power of the transformation divine wind escape just now. In their eyes, Zhao Chen just waved his sword and the gust of wind that made the soul tremble appeared. With their shallow knowledge, they did not understand what level of power it was. Only the old woman Muang's eyes flashed with surprise and sighed. Divine power. This young Master Chen actually has a divine power cultivator to protect him. You know, in this era, when Taichu preached not long ago, even the divine power in the Kunlun 9 veins is not much, and it is even rarer to appear outside. I didn't expect that in this remote place like Beating, I would be lucky enough to see the divine power. Zhao Chen didn't care what other people thought. He came to Miss Shen again, raised his lips, and said with a bright smile, I won. Miss Shen stared at him blankly, unconsciously attracted by the spiritual energy of the 5 immortals on his body. Her humanity suddenly overwhelmed the weird pollution on her body. She threw herself on Zhao Chen and burst into tears. Why? Why didn't you come earlier? Am I not pious enough to the Bodhisattva? No, it's just because you are unlucky. Because your home happens to be on the way to Lante. And the son of the beating protector general happened to choose this place as the place to intercept Gufeng, Zhang Yunlu and his party. You happened to be very beautiful and were favored by the evil young man. This may be designed by the existence who secretly contaminated the faith in advance, or it may just be a coincidence. But in any case, it's just because you are not strong enough and unlucky. Although thinking so in his heart, Zhao Chen stroked Miss Shen's hair without showing any disdain on the surface, and said gently, so, why not leave everything to me as agreed? I will let you get rid of it all, forget it all, and give you a new life, when the time is right. Are you serious? Miss Shen said with a confused look. When she asked this question, she seemed to hear Buddhist sounds in her ears, suppressing some extreme emotions. Of course, I said I would win and save you. Didn't I do what I said? Please believe me, Zhao Chen said sincerely. It turned out that after Zhao Chen took over the moon-grabbing sword from Ding Hangmei, he discovered the other party's identity and part of the nature of this strange domain through the big sun star aft. In this strange domain, theoretically, everything belongs to Miss Shen, or in other words, except Zhao Chen and Qi Meng, all other people and things are already part of Miss Shen. Even Gufeng and Zhang Yunlu are no exception to this. It's just that they have not been polluted deeply, and there is still a possibility of being rescued. When Zhao Chen was looking at the moon-grabbing sword, he established communication with Miss Shen's hidden humanity through this sword, and reached an agreement on a transaction. In other words, as long as Zhao Chen can successfully rescue her in this game, then she will agree to sell the weird carrier to Zhao Chen. After all, it was something close to her. Through communication, Zhao Chen also knew the cause and effect of the matter. While feeling sorry for Miss Shen, he knew that the so-called win or lose was only a matter of thought. The best strategy was to suppress her distorted and polluted heart and awaken her humanity. Therefore, Zhao Chen deliberately acted righteous, close-minded and powerful to satisfy all Miss Shen's fantasies about the heroes who could save her. In the end, relying on the Taichu true meaning of the spiritual energy of the 5 immortals and the help of Miss Qi, he barely suppressed part of Miss Shen's polluted spirit. Yes, Qi Meng, who seemed to have disappeared after opening the bedroom door of the courtyard, was not idle either. After she learned the ins and outs from Zhao Chen, she knew that, in order to awaken Miss Shen's humanity, those means alone were not enough. The most important thing was to suppress the source of pollution. And that source was a page of the Lotus Sutra that recorded 6-time Guanyin. The power from the weird was constantly distorting the text of the scripture, making it look like a wriggling insect. These little bugs were crookedly combined together to form a line of text, the 6-time demonic sutra. It was placed in the bedroom, on the bed, where Miss Shen was bullied, but it could not be touched. Qi Meng just looked at it, and scenes appeared in front of her eyes. It was the scene where Miss Shen was completely polluted by the 6-time demonic sutra and constantly hunted passers-by, including Zhang Yunlu, who had escaped here alone on the original trajectory. Zhang Yunlu was also full of resentment, and was confused by the weirdness. He merged with Miss Shen, turned into a demon, and became one of the original demons of Guanyin. So that's how it is. Is this serial task to help Guanyin Bodhisattva solve her own hidden dangers from the root? If Zhang Yunlu is rescued and Miss Shen is redeemed by Erlang, then this demon in Guanyin's heart will be completely gone. Well, it shouldn't be that simple. After all, the arrangements of the mastermind behind the scenes must not stop there, and the pollution of the belief in 6-time Guanyin cannot be limited to this one place. In the future, if there is no Zhang Yunlu, someone else will become this demon. But it's always a good thing that the Taoist priest's demons are gone. Thinking of this, Qi Fimeng took a deep breath, then sat cross-legged in front of the page of contaminated scriptures, and activated the Great Compassion and Great Mercy Universal Salvation Key with all his strength. The Guanyin picture appeared behind his mind, and he also preached the essence of the Bodhisattva to fight against the insect-like words. Chapter 120 Return. However, when the scripture that Qi Fimeng was reciting sounded, the page of scripture that was originally quietly placed on the bed seemed to be stimulated by something. Suddenly, it shone brightly, and countless insect-like words seemed to really come alive. It was no longer an illusion. People began to have confusion and bloodshot eyes after just one look. Qi Fimeng's delicate face showed pain. She bit her lip, as if she had made a decision. Then, a golden rune appeared between her eyebrows, and a female phantom with blonde hair and blue eyes, but her face and figure were extremely blurred, reflecting a shining flame, and illuminating all directions. God loves the world, and the saints follow. As Qi Fimeng silently recited this sentence, the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed. It seemed that the vicissitudes of life and awe-inspiring thoughts were slowly awakening, and descending on the phantom of the blonde and blue-eyed woman. Soon, the phantom gradually felt solid, and the light around it became stronger, illuminating all the surrounding darkness. It was intertwined with laws and principles, and was almost only one step away from achieving the power that a supernatural power should have. This is the strongest trick that Miss Qi can use with the residual divine power absorbed from the statue of the goddess of light and her special identity, calling for the saint to come. That is, using the empty shadow of the goddess of light to borrow some of the power of the patron saint she once canonized. This trick cannot be used in reality, because the church of the goddess of light there has been destroyed for nearly 10,000 years, and there are no saints anymore. However, this is the mist of history. In this era, the goddess of light should have started her missionary journey in the west. Qi Fimeng's face showed compassion, and the shadow behind him also stretched out his hands to cover the pollution revealed in the page of scriptures. But at this moment, the surroundings suddenly became dark and gloomy, and the shadow's hand of light seemed to shuttle through the vast starry sky, and could not reach the location of the scriptures. It is still the same as before, close at hand, far away. Suddenly, Qi Fimeng's eyes became extremely solemn, because in her perception, a bodhisattva holding a 6-character mantra, wearing heavenly clothes, and adorned with necklaces, stood barefoot at an infinite height, as if looking down at the sentient beings below. Sometimes her face showed compassion, as compassionate as a Buddha, and sometimes she was cold and cruel like a demon, with a cold feeling of killing, the depravity of rolling in the world, and the burning heat of the world, and even the great majesty and terror that Qi Fimeng dared not look directly at. The sea of suffering is boundless. The fallen demons cross the Buddha. The bodhisattva made a grand and indifferent voice, and then slapped Qi Fimeng directly. With a boom, the phantom of the goddess of light condensed by Qi Fimeng collapsed inch by inch, and the palm was about to fall on her head. Just when Qi Fimeng bit her lip, and was about to summon the bodhisattva picture to ward off the disaster, the surrounding vitality suddenly became clear, and there was no sense of pollution at all. And the 6-time Guanyin bodhisattva that was obviously wrong also disappeared. It seems that Erlang succeeded. Miss Qi immediately understood in her heart, and then she fell to the ground with a smile on her face and completely fainted. Obviously, the trick just now was a heavy burden for her. In the small courtyard, after Zhao Chen performed to the utmost and made various promises, Miss Shen, who regarded him as her hero, finally let go and said okay, handing over the ownership of herself and the weird contaminated scriptures to the other party. She was not unaware of the risks involved, but she, who had regained her humanity, was unwilling to harm others because of her own pain. Moreover, the young man in front of her was so perfect, so consistent with the hero she imagined who could save her. Since she couldn't save herself, she might as well trust the other party. I'm sorry. Miss Shen bowed to the old lady Muing and other innocent people to express her apology. Then, her figure gradually faded, and then disappeared completely, leaving only the words please, don't forget our agreement floating in the air. Don't worry. Zhao Chen nodded, and then he saw that the surrounding houses and the puppets surrounding everyone began to become blurred. This strange domain could no longer exist after losing its core. At this time, the old lady Muang, who was also fading, but at a slower speed than others, suddenly stepped forward, and then she shattered the dragon-headed cane in her hand, revealing an ice-blow longsword hidden in it. Muang turned the hilt upside down, handed the longsword to Zhao Chen, and solemnly said, "Mr. Chen, I have an unwelcome request. I hope you can return this sword to the Kyunghua sect. As for the reward, I have nothing. Only some books in my memory are still valuable. Please take it." Zhao Chen frowned when he saw this, and said carefully, "Actually, you can send it back by yourself." Why? Just now, when Miss Chen sold her and weirdness to herself, those people who were completely dominated by her were naturally included in the product list of Xingcha. But Muang was different. Although this old woman was deeply trapped in the weird domain, she was not completely dominated because of Miss Chen's guilt, and she still retained a certain degree of autonomy. And just now, she rejected the transaction request of Xingcha, so after weirdness disappeared, her incomplete soul could only die. "Mr. Chen, I'm old, and I don't want to hand myself over to an existence that I don't understand at all." Muang shook her head, and then said meaningfully, "Besides, I have a hunch. My mission is over." Before she finished speaking, her figure completely dissipated along with the surrounding houses. The second stage of the serial tasks, solving the root cause of the problem in Chenjiabao is over. The fall of 6 times is completed. Prepare to return. As this voice rang in his ears, Zhao Chen disappeared before he had time to say goodbye to Gufeng and Zhang Yunlu. However, this time, the scene did not freeze again, nor did it turn back to the black, white, and gray state. "Uncle Gu, can I see him again?" Past memories emerged in her mind, and Zhang Yunlu, who had already remembered that Zhao Chen and the others had disappeared once, asked blankly, "I don't know, maybe they are real immortals." Gu Feng's mind was a little confused at this time, and he didn't know what to say. After a while, the little girl Zhang Yunlu's eyes gradually brightened, as if she had made up her mind, and said in a firm tone, "Uncle Gu, I want to go to Xianyang City." At the same time, a sharp voice came from an unknown world somewhere. Who changed history? The star god came to the world, and fate is unpredictable. Most of the historical fog is a special field created by the Xianshan Wu-Tai to peek at the star god's relics. In theory, only the star god in the Xianshan Wu-Tai can change history. But in this world, only the Gai Teikai still exists, and he has been stared to death, so it's impossible. Chapter 121 Harvest. Kyungshao, in the cave of Lichen Sword Palace. A woman with a stern and majestic face and black hair cascading down like a waterfall woke up from the state of enlightenment, exuding an irresistible mysterious aura. She stretched out her fingers and quickly calculated, and then her beautiful lips slightly curled up. The demon god's attention has been temporarily misled to Song Wuyuru, and the great ancestor of Daksha has inadvertently done a good thing. In addition, the power of the goddess of light has also caused the source of the inner demon to misjudge, and its attention will be more focused on Taxi. But such misleading cannot last long. It will be discovered in 3 to 5 years at most. During this time, you should try your best to grow. In the palace shrouded in mist, on the big sun star chariot, Zhao Chen sat on a seat formed by 6 entwined golden dragons. He casually opened the jade book on the desk and began to organize the gains from this historical mist trip. First of all, the beating protectorate priests controlled by Miss Shen have all been sold as commodities and can be exchanged at any time to be used by me like Wang Daoi. But among them, the one with the highest cultivation is Chen Pingxi, the thunder sword of the 9 apertures, whose appearance fee is much cheaper than that of Wang Daoi, the powerful cultivator. The price of exchanging Wang Daoi for 1 second is enough for them to come out for half a day. In addition, their identities and luck are extremely cheap. When I need to disguise myself in the future, I can directly use these people's identities to bless myself, and I won't have to worry about the calculations of the experts. Thinking of this, Zhao Chen's eyes swept over the many martial arts secrets in the list, and continued to calculate. Although the ancient Taoist book by the ancient old demon is a secret book that directly points to the realm of magic power, it is actually just the practice record of his master, the previous generation of the ancient old demon. It contains scattered records of some martial arts, as well as the method of refining a spell and a magic weapon. It is not very profound, but extremely superficial. Even how to build the "spiritual platform and break through the manner" is explained very vaguely, only saying that it was a coincidence, and that some kind of elixir was used to succeed. This can't be considered a true teaching at all, let alone magical powers. There is no hope of practicing to the third level of mana. In terms of basics, it is not even as good as the practice of those scattered spells that Yan Hongxia brought back from the Taoist office. You know, the latter is just a technique, and accumulating true energy and mana is just a byproduct. This ancient Taoist book is not expensive, only 420 star coins, so it was bought directly by Zhao Chen, who is currently rich and powerful, and he began to study it. Because the only spell in the Taoist book is a soul binding and soul nourishing technique that Zhao Chen has always wanted but can't get. It's not difficult to practice, but if it is not based on the Yunfeng Taoist book, the cost and taboos of using this spell are too steep, right? It's okay to feed your own blood regularly, but you can't listen to any thunder sounds. Otherwise, he would be killed immediately by the backlash. In ancient times, perhaps one could hide from thunderstorms, or pray that the enemy would not know how to use thunder. But in Daxia, the sounds of various firearms are actually considered thunder sounds. After all, gunpowder explosions are a kind of fire thunder. This is too tricky. Zhao Chen was speechless. He felt that it would be better for him to practice this and find Miss Qi to cooperate every time. Shaking his head slightly, he looked at the other contents in the list. Among the martial arts secrets of the true key and refining orifice realms, only Chen Ping's his thunder sword 3 slashes and the Qianghua school's martial arts books in Madame Muang's memory are worth reading. Especially the Shen Fumingyu and Guang's Heo Wuji Gong, as the true key technique of the Kunlun Qianghua lineage is of the same status as the secret records of Qigang and the 12 doors of the Golden Tower and Jade Chamber of the Xianyang city lineage, and can cultivate the natural mysterious true key, a rather magical superior true key. And as a sword cultivating sect, the Qianghua sect's technique is derived from the non-thought, no love natural divine chapter, one of the Teichuji Ushinshai and Sheng divine jade chapters. Although it can cultivate the first-class great supernatural power all world come, it pursues the ruthless swordsmanship of heaven and earth are unkind and treat all things as straw dogs. This doesn't quite fit with my personality. Forget it, and I don't have any subsequent techniques either. In addition, I can practice several Qianghua sect sword techniques in Madame Muang's memory, especially the sword control technique, which is the foundation of the rest of the Qianghua sword techniques. But the range of sword control in the true key and refining orifice stages depends on one's own spiritual perception. That is to say, I can only control the sword 3 to 5 feet away at most. That's still not as good as gunfighting technique. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen closed the product page of the Jade book, and then turned to the 2 most valuable items that he had not exchanged for crossing Cha this time. Ice Wheel Sword, a magic weapon. One of the 9 magic weapon level weapons forged by the Qianghua school. It needs to find a suitable host to exert its full power and show the power of Dongsun. Currently, it can only produce Qianghua sword energy at the level of mana 9 revolutions. The standard recycling price of crossing Cha is 80,000 star coins. If this sword was not entrusted by the old woman to be sent back to Qianghua, and he also felt that keeping this sword would be useful in the future, Zhao Chen really wanted to sell it directly. 80,000. All his assets added up are not even 1/8 of this number. However, Zhao Chen still resisted the temptation, because if he really sold this sword, he would have to double the price to redeem it, which would not be worth it. After all, if you can find a suitable host, you can immediately get a combat power close to Dongsun. Magical weapons are cultivation items above divine power instruments, and their level is equivalent to Dongsun. And this kind of weapon, like magic weapon, also known as treasure weapon, can become a treasure that some cultivation families and sects use. to suppress their families and sects. The host must be a woman with a pure yin body or a taoyin body. This is indeed rare. And women who really have this physique are also likely to hide. After all, they are the most suitable physiques for being a cauldron. Zhao Chen recalled the knowledge he had learned in Bodhisattva joyful weaving, and set his sights on the most dangerous item obtained in this mission, scripture with a trace of evil thoughts from the source of the heart demon. The source of the heart demon is a supreme demon, equivalent to the fruit position of the Taoist monarch. After reciting this scripture in reality, you can designate any person or object as the core, to temporarily create a strange domain, but it is likely to attract the attention of the source of the heart demon. If you need to block it, you need to pay separately. It cannot be recovered for the time being. It is indeed impossible to recover, because as soon as the evil thoughts of the source of the heart demon entered the star chariot, they were sealed by the demon sealing vermilion pen just like the weird earth god before. Update progress, 5/45. Chapter 122, Counting the Fat Sheep. But unlike the polluted earth god, even if it is sealed, the scripture still has power, and can still be used. Is this because of the different carriers, or the different sources of pollution? Maybe the evil spirits like weird have more than one origin. In addition, the source of the inner demon is not something that is easy to deal with. Fei Meng and I destroyed its plan in the fog of history. I'm afraid that it will be retaliated in the future. Zhao Chen felt a little overwhelmed when he thought that a supreme being at the level of a Taoist master might target him. Fortunately, it should be safe in Daksha. Strength, everything is not a problem with strength. Zhao Chen shook his head and shook off the distracting thoughts in his mind, but the sense of urgency in his heart did not decrease. I have to achieve key perfection as soon as possible and start refining my key. Although my cultivation speed is already incredibly fast in the eyes of others, it is still not enough. Well, since the act of selling the goods in the star chariot to others at a higher price through my hands can meet the requirements of a traveling merchant or deputy envoy of galaxy transportation and speed up the progress of key cultivation, I will actively play the role. As for the possible risks, I don't need to use my own identity. Thinking of this, Zhao Chen's mind moved, and he exited the big sun star chariot and returned to the carriage that was traveling in the desert. His eyes first swept over Fei Meng's face, only to see that her eyes were closed, and she leaned against the inner wall of the carriage peacefully, without any sign of waking up. She has been in this state since she came back from the mission, and half a day has passed. If Zheng Qingan, who was sitting in the other corner of the carriage, had not assured that she was just overexerted and nothing serious, Zhao Chen would have sent her back to the county town for medical treatment. Looking at the expressionless and stunning girl in front of him, Zhao Chen couldn't help but ask again, "Are you sure she's really okay?" Zheng Qingan rushed over shortly after they returned and sneaked into the carriage, guarding Fei Meng's side. "She is the real body. If something really goes wrong, I will be implicated as well," Zheng Qingan replied coldly. The implication was that, since I'm fine, it means that I'm fine. Although he knew that Fei Meng needed to perfectly play the role of others, even the personality had to be simulated, but Zhao Chen was still a little uncomfortable with her cold way of speaking. He couldn't help but muttered, "Are you really Fei Meng? It feels like two completely different people." Hearing this, Zheng Qingan glanced at him, and then stretched out her right hand, and grabbed Zhao Chen's hand, clasping his fingers together. Then, the heroic girl in white warrior clothes turned her head slightly, and said in a flat voice, "Do you believe it now? This is an action that a girl from the Zheng family would never do." Seeing Zheng Qingan in such a posture, Zhao Chen felt his heart beating violently for a few times, and he had to admit that he was teased. But he quickly came to his senses, knowing that Fei Meng was deliberately joking, so he also smiled and joked. "Fei Meng doesn't shyly turn her head away when holding hands with me." Zheng Qingan turned her head, looked into Zhao Chen's eyes, and said seriously, "Zheng Qingan is a girl from an aristocratic family, who is devoted to spiritual practice. She has no emotional experience. After she falls in love with a man, isn't it normal for her to react like this?" "That makes sense, but you are acting out of character," Zhao Chen pointed out with a smile. "It doesn't matter if I act out in front of you. After all, you know my background. Having said that, Zheng Qingan soon returned to her previous cold attitude and no longer spoke easily. The carriage was quiet for a while. Seeing this, Zhao Chen did not stay in the carriage. After saying hello to Zheng Qingan, he got off the car. In the following time, he learned to ride a horse with senior brother Feng while looking for a suitable trading target. The carriage pulling the goods moves slowly, and the journey will not be delayed because of learning to ride a horse. There are 4 potential suckers. No, there are 4 potential customers. The first is Moqiu, the owner of the Black Cloud Martial Arts School. Her Black Cloud Palm is a powerful poison skill, but it can only be cultivated to the 7th orifice. She must be eager for subsequent skills. And there are several skills in Xingcha that can be cultivated to the 9th orifice. Even the Yinshan Daoshu that I don't like is a great opportunity for her. Her intention to trade is beyond doubt. The only problem is her ability to pay. I can't lose money, right? The second one is senior brother Feng. The master suddenly died, and now he lacks subsequent skills. He may not even be introduced to the Yuan sect. But senior brother Feng is also a poor guy. I guess he can't come up with anything valuable unless he uses the Yuan sect's skills in exchange. But although senior brother Feng doesn't look serious on weekdays, he is a very principled person in his bones. It is almost impossible for him to sell out the sect's skills. The third one is Uncle Zan, the captain of the fire gun team, who was originally assigned to me by my father, but now he has become my self-made follower. Although he is not even a cultivator, as a former partner of my cheap father, he is very wealthy, which can be seen from his daily food, clothing and daily expenses. And this Uncle Zan may have been helping my cheap father to manage some shady business in the past. Is he really just an ordinary person? Finally, there is the so-called Dunhuang gun casting master Tao Zhao who came to take advantage of the convoy. He may also be a member of the secret gathering that Sister Hangsha brought me to join. He probably has a lot of good things in his hands. He is the fattest one among the several fat sheep. Just when he thought of this, the horse under Zhao Chen's crotch was frightened for some reason and began to circle in place and kick up. Zhao Chen was startled and could not help but hold the reins tightly. He barely maintained his balance by relying on his own true ki realm. He frowned and felt a little strange. According to the affinity of his own 5 immortal spiritual ki, even if it was not fully operational, animals would still be close to him. The current situation was definitely not normal. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen released his spiritual sense to check, but found nothing. At the same time, behind a sand dune several miles away from the convoy, a cavalry of more than 20 knights ambushed. One of the men with a sinister face stared at Zhao Chen, who was holding his horse, with resentful eyes, and said to the black-robed man in the lead, "Boss, when are we going to start?" If Zhao Chen were here, he would definitely recognize that the sinister man was the enemy of his master, Yi Liwen, the leader of the Sand Snake gang in Bingquan Town. Before, he was unwilling to let his master just withdraw from Bingquan Town and go out to find helpers for revenge, which was considered to be a dodge. However, as the Chijin area was pulled into the historical fog, his target of hatred also shifted from Master Huang to Zhao Chen. No hurry. This place is too close to the county town, and the firearms team guarding the caravan are quite elite, so a strong attack is not a good idea. Well, according to the speed of this team's advance, they should stay overnight at Black Mountain Fort tomorrow night, and I have an old relationship with the owner of Black Mountain Fort, so we can set up an ambush there. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Vampire. In the caravan, Zhao Chen circulated his own ki and finally calmed down the horse he was sitting on, so that it stopped circling back and forth. Seeing this, senior brother Feng on the side also stopped coming to help, and said with a smile, "Junior brother, it seems that you and this horse are not compatible." Rather than saying that they are not compatible, it is more like the horse was startled by something. But why didn't I feel it? Zhao Chen was puzzled, but did not say it out loud. After stroking the horse's mane, he smiled and said, "It was just playing a joke on me." Mr. Chen is such a gentle person. At this time, the voice of Ning Meng, a disciple of MOQIU, the owner of the Black Cloud Martial Arts Hall, came over. She had long been thinking about how to get to know Zhao Chen, but unfortunately he had been staying in the carriage with his maid before and could not find a suitable opportunity. Zhao Chen looked at the little girl with silver hair and red eyes, who was obviously different from the girls of Daxia, and responded politely, "Miss Ning Meng, you are too kind. I'm just making excuses for my poor riding skills." Mr. Chen is really humorous. Ning Meng covered her mouth and smiled, but in fact, she used this action to wipe the saliva flowing from the corner of her mouth without leaving a trace. She suddenly felt that it was not a wise thing to obey her thoughts and get to know Zhao Chen, because she seemed to be unable to suppress the desire and longing from the depths of her soul. As for the girl, Zhao Chen did not have the habit of scanning with spiritual perception. After all, it was Tarog, so he did not find Ning Meng's abnormality. After that, the two chatted briefly for a few more words, and Ning Meng pulled the reins and rode back to the team of the Black Cloud Martial Arts Hall. The owner of the MOQIU hall looked at his little apprentice and said unhappily, "You got to know her this time as you wished. You are really promising." Ning Meng did not speak, but closed her eyes and tried her best to calm her impulse by meditation. MOQIU finally noticed something was wrong and asked with concern, "What's wrong? Did Mr. Chen hurt you?" "No. I was too excited, which caused the key to go wrong." Ning Meng explained intermittently, but she was confused in her heart. Why do I want to bite his neck so much? Do I have any quirks? On the other side, looking at Ning Meng's back, Zhao Chen frowned, vaguely feeling that the girl seemed a little too excited. When she left, her body was shaking a little. At this time, Feng Kang's sour voice came over. "Junior brother, you are really popular with girls. Senior brother, since you have achieved true key, there is no need to maintain virginity. You should also consider the issue of getting married, right? Do you have a goal?" Zhao Chen directly turned the tables and performed a set of Jihuafa and threw the question to Feng Kang. However, Feng Kang was a little embarrassed when he heard it, and he didn't speak for a long time. "Huh? Really? Gossip has been human nature since ancient times." Zhao Chen immediately became interested and asked with a wink, "Which girl is it?" "You. Someone you know." Senior brother Feng, who is usually good at joking, couldn't even speak clearly at this moment. "Someone I know? I know many girls, but the ones who have crossed paths with you. Could it be the owner of the MOQIU pavilion?" Zhao Chen asked curiously. The owner of the MOQIU pavilion is about the same age as the senior brother, both in their 20s, and has a plump figure and good looks. It's normal for the senior brother to like her. It's just that her personal reputation is not very good. It is rumored that she has an affair with a famous martial arts master. No, no. Senior brother Feng shook his head again and again. His face flushed, and after a long while he uttered, "Yes, she is older than the owner of the MOQIU pavilion." "What do you mean by older?" Zhao Chen complained in his heart, but then he reacted and said in surprise, "Brother, are you attracted to my Aunt Lin?" Aunt Lin, of course, refers to Lin Ruxiang, who manages most of Zhao Chen's business. She is already 34 or 35 years old this year, and is indeed much older than brother. "What aunt? Miss Lin is very charming, and looks younger than many young girls. Don't call her old." Feng Kang retorted without thinking. "You really are a lover's eye for beauty. But, why do I remember that Aunt Lin has a husband?" Zhao Chen asked with a frown. "How is it possible? I have asked around. Miss Lin has been managing various businesses in Shanghai before, and has never been married." Feng Kang said confidently. "Ah, I remember that Aunt Lin's husband seems to be in Bingquan Town. Did she suddenly go from being a married woman to being unmarried?" Zhao Chen didn't know whether he should support his senior brother to pursue happiness at this time. What if he really succeeded? What if Miss Key and I completed the special mission by chance 3 months later, and the red gold region returned to reality again? It would be a tragedy. But he didn't want to discourage his senior brother's enthusiasm, so he decided to increase the difficulty for him and wait for 3 months. "Senior brother, Miss Lin. Miss Lin's situation is not as simple as you think. You have to work hard if you want to marry her," Zhao Chen said earnestly. "What do you mean?" Feng Kang rode up and asked eagerly. She likes scholars who can recite poems and write couplets, not big and strong muscular men like you. Zhao Chen was not lying. After all, Lin Ruxiang had been following the original owner's mother for a long time, and he was also influenced by her in this regard. Hearing this, Feng Kang was struck by lightning, and his whole body shrank. He really couldn't learn those things. After dampening his senior brother's enthusiasm, Zhao Chen stopped practicing horse riding, and went back to his carriage. As soon as he sat down, Zheng Qingan in the corner said, "Someone just used a spell-like ability to spy on you, which scared your horse." As expected, Zhao Chen thought to himself and asked directly, "Who was it?" "It should be a group of horse thieves. They didn't choose to ambush. I'm afraid they gave up after measuring the combat effectiveness of your team." Zheng Qingan said coldly, "Why didn't I notice that I was spied on?" Zhao Chen asked. Logically, even if his spiritual perception was not released, he should have sensed it when it involved himself. Spiritual perception is not omnipotent, and many spells can hide from the perception of spiritual perception. As for why your horse could sense it, I guess the other party is not a real mana cultivator, so spells still have flaws and taboos, and animals, or simply horses, are the flaws. I see. Zhao Chen nodded suddenly, feeling that he had learned a lot. Zheng Qingan said hesitantly, "By the way, you should pay attention to Ningmeng. She may be a vampire whose bloodline has not been awakened. The blood of the cultivators who cultivate the 5 immortal spiritual key is the supreme temptation for vampires, and is called perfect blood. Fortunately, you haven't practiced the changes of Black Emperor blood flow yet, otherwise she would have awakened directly just now." Chapter 124 A Transaction and a Gift. Vampires. Are there such strange things in this world? Zhao Chen's expression was subtle, but he soon remembered Jane Lana Phoenix, a member of the Phoenix family whom he had killed. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Is it similar to the Phoenix family?" "You know the Phoenix family?" Zheng Qingan looked at him in surprise, but soon nodded and said, "It is indeed similar. They are both warlock families, but the Phoenix is an out-of-control Taoist evil, and the ancestor of the vampire did not completely degenerate into a demon. In other words, the Phoenix was originally a cultivator, but eventually degenerated into a demon, and the ancestor of the vampire can still be saved." Zhao Chen thought for a moment and asked again, "Warlock? Aren't practitioners in Taixi called wizards?" "Warlocks are a special kind of wizard. They are often the descendants of ascending to the mysterious beings. Well, in Taixi, they are called domain wizards, and they are passed down in the form of a family. Unlike orthodox wizards and Ardaksha practitioners, they do not need to rely on practice to improve their cultivation. Instead, they rely on constantly exploring the power of their own blood to advance. Generally speaking, the core members of these warlock families with pure blood have the power of the refining level once they reach adulthood. After that, as long as they continue to do what the source of the blood likes, they can gradually obtain blood spells and improve their strength until they reach a level similar to a Gangsha realm. And after that, blood awakening is required. The conditions required for each warlock's blood awakening are different. The only consistent thing is that the blood purity must be high. After the warlock's blood awakens, he can obtain the innate magical powers granted by the source of the blood and become a magical cultivator. Well, it is also called a morning star wizard in Taixi. Zheng Qingan told Zhao Chen what she knew, but he didn't realize that the more Zhao Chen listened, the weirder he felt. How come this description of doing what the source of the bloodline likes, you can get magic and improve your strength is so similar to the system of the... Could it be that my acting, based on the name of the is also to please the... The only difference is that it doesn't rely on blood. While Zhao Chen was thinking, Zheng Qingan continued to explain, the disadvantage of sorcerers is that the more they try to please the existence of the source of the bloodline, the closer they are to the other party, and their personality and emotions will be affected. It's okay in the Tangxuan stage, but once they enter the Dangxuan, it will be difficult to control them if there are no other means to check and balance them. If they are not careful, they will be Taoized on the spot and turned into demons. However, in this regard, all the cultivation methods in the world are similar, except that the path of the sorcerer is more dangerous. For example, the Zheng family's Dragon King's Blessing Sutra, although it does not rely on blood, but the process of accepting the Tao of the Dragon King, a great evil demon, and establishing a connection with him is equally dangerous. Even if this method was written by the Zheng family's Shengxuan ancestor, who resisted most of the pollution, it is the same. When the Zheng family cultivators reach the Dangxuan stage, they must supplement the Thunder Jade Pivot Forgiveness Treasure Repentance to maintain their humanity. Only the methods of the three major holy places can be considered safe in comparison, but it is not absolute. After all, the methods of Taichu Daojin and Guanyin Bodhisattva were once safe. But now, at this point, Zheng Qingyan shook her head slightly. All the techniques in the world are not safe. This is the second time Zhao Chen has heard Fei Meng talk about this, but he didn't care too much. After all, the so-called danger has nothing to do with cultivators at the level of true Qi, refining orifices, or even mana and gangsha. Only cultivators who have reached the divine power, and are most likely to be cultivators of the upper third grade divine power are worthy to worry about this. It's too early for him now. Although Zhao Chen loves excitement, he has always been a pragmatist, so after a little thought, he asked again, after a sorcerer fails to awaken, are the materials left behind useful? This is what he should care about now. Of course it is useful. Zheng Qingyan glanced at Zhao Chen. I said before, that the most important thing for a sorcerer is the purity of his bloodline, and even if the awakened sorcerer fails, the things he left behind can greatly improve the purity of the bloodline of other clansmen. This is likely to create a divine power for his family, and it is something that must be retrieved no matter what. So that's how it is. No wonder some members of the Phoenix family came from Taxi to Daksha to track down Jane Lana Phoenix. It's a pity that they don't know that those relics have been sold by me to the Great Sunstar Chariot. After solving the doubts in his mind, Zhao Chen suddenly remembered what Zheng Qingyan said about his blood, and asked, my blood can awaken the vampires? Not yet. Well, the great magical power of 5 emperors paying homage to the truth embodies the beauty of the Tao, and this beauty is all-round perfection, naturally including blood. You don't even have to practice the 5 emperors paying homage to the truth, as long as you use the 5 immortal spiritual true Qi as a basis, and cultivate the change of Black Emperor's blood circulation, it will be enough to make the vampires crazy. Because that can greatly increase the purity of their blood, and suppress the influence of the vampire ancestor. Having said that, Zheng Qingyan rarely showed a smile. Even if it was still stiff, it made Zhao Chen feel that the room was brightened. In other words, I might be a big gift package for the vampires. Zhao Chen was speechless, and at the same time, decided to try to avoid Ning Meng, that little girl, in the future, so as not to seduce her, and make a mistake. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen no longer entangled in this topic, and turned to Zheng Qingyan and said, by the way, after camping, I need you to do me a favor. What favor? It's very simple. Just steal the owner of the MOQIU pavilion after nightfall, and send him to me. Before the last rays of the sun disappeared, the caravan finally arrived at the post station in the desert. It was called a post station, but it was actually a small market with a water source. There were not many buildings here, but there were many flat and leeward open spaces for the merchants to camp. Although it was Zhao Chen's first time to do business, his men, whether they were the fire gun team or the caravan members, were all veterans, so they skillfully set up tents, and formed a circle with carriages and horses. MOQIU, the owner of the Black Cloud Martial Arts Hall, was also a caravan guard for the first time. He carefully observed the behavior of his peers, and kept it in mind. When it was completely dark, she felt a little tired for some reason, so she returned to her tent, intending to rest for a while, and then take over from her apprentice, to guard the second half of the night. But not long after she fell asleep, her whole body was swallowed up by a sudden bubble, and disappeared silently in the tent. After an unknown amount of time, MOQIU suddenly woke up, only to find herself in a mysterious space, with a majestic figure wearing a hood looking down at her. This is a deal, but also a gift. Update progress, 6/45. Chapter 125 Routines and Treasures. MOQIU had completely regained consciousness by this time. He looked around in fear and confusion, and found himself in a space shrouded in fog. In addition to the majestic figure with his face hidden in the hood, there was another woman whose face could not be seen clearly not far from her. Where is this place? What did that person mean by a deal, a gift? Just as MOQIU had one question after another in his mind, the woman not far from her was the first to ask, I don't know who you are, and why did you bring me here? It turned out that this woman was the same as me. MOQIU looked at the woman who was speaking a few times, and was shocked to find that her aura was so strong that it far exceeded the mana realm cultivators she had seen, and even stronger than the Blue Lotus Sword Li Fuan, whom she had the honor of meeting once. Of course, this may be related to the fact that Li Fuan's momentum is usually restrained, and this woman is now ready to go. But in any case, it shows that she is at least a magical cultivator. A cultivator with magical powers was brought to this mysterious space silently. How powerful must the hooded man behind the mist be? The more MOQIU thought about it, the more scared she became. She didn't understand why she was related to such an existence. I said, this is a deal, and also a gift. The majestic man behind the mist repeated his previous words, and then whispered, you have established contact with me for different reasons, and you have obtained this opportunity. Now, the transaction officially begins. After the transaction is over, you can leave. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground shook violently, and then a towering stone tablet slowly rose. The stone tablet was densely written with lines of text and tiny characters, but more than half of it was covered by fog, and only a small part could be seen. MOQIU, who was still a little confused, looked at it, and saw that the first line of the content she could see was written, 5 emperors paying homage to the true magical power, 53,000 star coins. And below that, there are 5 emperors true sword art, Blue Lotus Sword Sutra, Secret Divine Wind 9 swords true art and other magical skills that she has heard of or not heard of, as well as various spells and instruments, all with clear prices, as if as long as you can afford the star coins, you can get them immediately. Is this a deal? MOQIU stared at these skills and treasures that she had never dared to think about before, and asked in a hoarse voice. That's right, as long as you can afford the star coins, you can exchange the corresponding items. The mysterious man nodded slightly, confirming her guess. Hearing this, MOQIU suddenly became excited. After all, such a deal can indeed be called an opportunity for a small person like her. And it is very likely a great opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. She quickly let go of most of her worries and precautions, took a deep breath, showed the polite smile that she usually wore, and asked nervously, Sir, how can I get the star coins? Kung fu, spells, items, knowledge, anything of value can be exchanged for star coins. The mysterious man replied in a flat tone. Anything can be exchanged? MOQIU wanted to ask in detail, but he saw a woman not far away taking out a grass green longsword with 7 forks. The aura on the sword was really terrible, as if it was gathering countless destructive thunders. How much is this sword? The woman said coldly. A magical weapon, 12,000 star coins. The mysterious man gave the price after just one glance. The woman, whose face could not be seen clearly, nodded slightly, then stretched out her hand and pointed to several items on the stone tablet. I want this, and this. Transaction established. As a low voice sounded, the grass green longsword completely disappeared, and 3 ancient books that looked quite old appeared in the woman's hands. The woman flipped through the book and took a few glances. Then, for the first time, her cold voice was filled with joy. Very good. It is indeed the core part of the Dragon King's Blessing Sutra. The Dragon King's Blessing Sutra. It seems to be the orthodox practice of the Zheng family. This magical power is a branch of the Zheng family, so they sold the precious magical instruments in exchange for the core practice of the Dragon King's Blessing Sutra. Seeing this, MOQIU immediately had a guess. At the same time, her heart became more and more hot. After all, the role model was right in front of her, and the transaction seemed fair, not like a trap. What's more, what do I have that is worth being deceived by a cultivator who can manipulate magical powers at will? After MOQIU laughed at herself in her heart, she began to look at the lower level of the stone tablet. She was very self-aware and knew that those 2 expensive things were not worth buying. It was meaningless for her, except to look at them with envy. It would be better to choose a practice that could improve the inheritance of her own martial arts hall. And soon, she locked her eyes on a classic called Yunshin Daoshu. According to the introduction, this is a flawed mana level technique, but it contains several kinds of ki and orifice refining martial arts, each of which is much better than the inheritance of her own martial arts hall. And one of them, the Yinming palm, seems to be very compatible with her own black cloud palm. Of course, the most important thing is cheap. It only costs 500 star coins, which is the cheapest mana level secret book on the stone tablet. Moqiu gritted his teeth, took out his weapons and life-saving talismans, and wrote out the secret book of the Black Cloud Palm, and sold it to the stone tablet together. But unfortunately, these are only worth less than 100 star coins, which is far from the amount of 500. The mysterious man behind the mist, that is, Zhao Chen, looked at this scene and silently reviewed whether he was too black-hearted and set the price a little higher. Just when he was thinking about whether to allow the other party to repay the mortgage, he saw Moqiu gritted her teeth and said as if she had made up her mind, "Sir, I know a secret. I wonder if it can be exchanged for star coins?" After saying that, she also glanced at the woman next to her. "Secret?" Zhao Chen raised his eyebrows and winked at the other woman. The latter immediately understood and cooperated with Zhao Chen's waving gesture and disappeared. But what Moqiu didn't know was that the woman appeared beside Zhao Chen the next moment, but was shrouded in fog and could not be seen. "Tell me about it." Zhao Chen controlled his tone and tried to make his attitude seem calm. Moqiu exhaled lightly and organized his sentences. "The secret is that in the southwest of Dunhuang, there is a secret passage in the cracks of the endless desert that can connect to an oasis that has not yet been discovered. There is a high possibility that there is a treasure from ancient times. There are very few people who know this information. Apart from me, there are only two brothers, Ma Guangming and Ma Guangliang, the first and second heroes of the 7 heroes of the southern desert. And they haven't completely explored the passage yet, and haven't found the treasure in the oasis." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.